I would like to call this meeting to order for the City Council meeting of August 20th, 2019. Madam Clerk, could you please call the roll?
Councilmember Cordero?
Here.
Councilmember Moats? Here. Councilmember Soto?
Here.
Councilmember Waterfield?
Here.
And Mayor Patino.
Here. Our first item this evening is the public comment period. We don't have any proclamations or resolutions. Madam Clerk, could you please read the criteria for the public comment portion of the agenda?
This time is reserved to accept comments from the public on consent agenda items, closed session items, or matters not otherwise scheduled on the printed agenda. Unless otherwise directed by the mayor, speakers will have 3 minutes to comment. Direction to staff may be given. However, state law does not allow action to be taken by the City Council on matters not on the printed agenda. Once the public comment period commences, no other speakers will be allowed to submit a request to speak form. And Madam Mayor, we have 16 requests to speak.
Thank you. So no other requests to speak forms we accepted at this time. Sarah McDonald, followed by Lois Chapman Sullivan, followed by Carmen Rivera.
Good evening, Madam Mayor and Council and City officials. I'm Sarah MacDonald from the League of Women Voters and the Director of the Observer Corps, and I'm here to observe your meeting tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Lois Chapman Sullivan, followed by Carmen Rivera, followed by Nancy Truby.
Hello. Thank you for allowing me to come and speak to you again. I just had a couple notes, and I was here the last time, and I talked about the rent stabilization, and this is what I'm talking about again this time, because let me explain to you a little bit. When I was here the last time, I spoke to a great extent for the senior community, many of whom were here, and we're here in force because it's so important to us at our stage of life. But I got home, and I started thinking about it and thinking, man, this is really important. I hope the city works with us on this. But then I started thinking, I came here, my husband and I came here to Santa Maria, and we love this community. Yes, we love our mobile home where we live and those people, but this is a phenomenal community. I have lived overseas in other countries, experienced many cultures, many languages, lots of things, and I'm here now. The cultures, the integration of cultures, the way people work together here is phenomenal. And I'm sure, we all have good days and bad days, but it's an amazing community. The people here share, they work together, they support the city, and I'm talking about families. Not just us, the senior citizens. You got families in this community who need your support in this area. And no, they're not here, but you know what? They're out working because they're trying to make the money, because a lot of these people don't own these family homes, these expensive homes. They own or they rent. And they need this kind of support just like we all do. They're out there working their behinds off to put their children through school, to do what needs to be done. And so when you consider this, as we want you to, yes, of course, for us, please consider it for the entire community, because we got families out there who need you. They can't be here, but we want to represent them too. And I appreciate you listening, and I really appreciate you taking this into consideration. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Sullivan. You should be working for the Chamber of Commerce. I think I saw Mr. Morris here.
What was that?
I said you should be working for the Chamber of Commerce.
Oh.
Thank you for your comments. Carmen Rivera, followed by Nancy Truby, followed by Gary Hall.
Good evening. My name is Carmen Rivera, and today I bring from Family Service Agency in San Maria Valley Youth and Family Center a invitation to our Good Life photo contest. We started our photo contest for the first time this year in North County. We participated last year. There were lots of awards and prizes. This year, our celebration and our winners, that's what I wanted to say, our winners will be first place $100, second place $50, and third place $25. We want all of the entries to be in by October 1st, and the unveiling of the winning photographs will be October 28th. I wanted to leave these with you and then leave some in the back. And thank you, and we hope to see everyone on October 28th. Thank you.
Nancy Truby, followed by Gary Hall, followed by Madeline Gay Robertson.
Good evening, Madam Mayor and council members. My name is Nancy Truby, and I'm a resident of Rancho Buena Vista Mobile Estates at 2135 North Railroad Avenue here in Santa Maria. I have lived at Rancho Buena Vista for nearly 5.5 years. I am retired, and I am living on a fixed income. I rely on Social Security and its annual cost of living adjustment to try to keep the pace with the cost of living here in Santa Maria. Unfortunately, space rent at Rancho Buena Vista has been rising far faster than Social Security. Just like many of my senior friends and neighbors, I won't be able to keep up. I have had to say goodbye to several people who were priced out and forced to move out of the state to Arizona, Idaho, Oklahoma, and points east in order to maintain their independence. Others have been forced to sell their homes and move into less desirable neighborhoods here near their relatives in California. I like living here and I want to stay. I need your help. I am here tonight to ask and encourage you to please put the enforceable manufactured home rent stabilization in Santa Maria on the City Council agenda immediately. Thank you.
Thank you. Gary Hall, followed by Madeline Gay Robertson.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, council members. My name is Gary Hall. I am a resident of Rancho Buena Vista Mobile Estates at 2135 North Railroad Avenue here in Santa Maria. But first, I just want to acknowledge and thank my fellow manufactured home park residents for coming tonight. And I'd like for everybody to raise your hand so they know who all we are. My comments this evening are on behalf of them and also the North Santa Barbara County Manufactured Home Team, or NSBIT. We launched our initiative we call Enforceable Manufactured Home Rent Stabilization in Santa Maria in 2017, and now we are more committed than ever. We continue to ask for action that will correct the failure of the informal and voluntary model lease program of 1999, 2, end the excessive rent increases that have become routine over the last 19 years. 3, protect the manufactured homeowners from any future predatory manufactured park owners. And 4, to help maintain affordable housing for seniors and low-income citizens who remain vulnerable to the rising cost of living here in Santa Maria. We acknowledge recent efforts by the City Manager Stillwell and by City Attorney Watson to help develop Enforceable Model Lease 2020, or EML 2020. In the interest of better defining NSBIT's and all of our expectations, I developed a summary of what we envisioned it to be and submitted it to the city on August 13th. Highlights of that summary are as follows. EML 2020 is a City of Santa Maria enforced program. It has been developed to restrain the rapidly rising and often exorbitant space rents imposed on manufactured homeowners in Santa Maria. EML 2020 represents a compromised and a balanced approach that provides affordability protection to the homeowners while still providing the park owners access to a fair return on their investments. This is accomplished by establishing a base set of lease provisions with protective limits. The balance of the non-base lease provisions remain flexible and subject to negotiation between homeowners and park owners. All leases taking effect in 2020 or later shall conform to EML 2020. The program is applicable to all Santa Maria parks and will be communicated by the City of Santa Maria to all homeowners and/or residents and park owners. Enforcement of EML 2020 will be provided by the City of Santa Maria in the same manner as is employed for any ordinance, rule, regulation, or initiative adopted by the City of Santa Maria. I've not received a response yet from the city, but we look forward to it and being able to sit down and discuss this as soon as possible. We are prepared to do whatever is necessary to earn the opportunity to get enforceable manufactured home rent stabilization in Santa Maria on the City Council agenda. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hall. Madeline Gay Robertson, followed by Margaret White.
Good evening, Madam Mayor and City Council people. My name is Madeline Gay Robertson. I live at La Maria Mobile Home Park. How many's here? La Maria? All of us, right. I can speak for myself, but also some unfortunate neighbors that cannot be here due to their own disabilities. We're very close at this park. I've been retired 2.5 years now. I do not quite hit Medicare yet. My income that I bring in is less than the rent increases that happen every December 1st. For the last 7 years that I've lived at La Maria, I've been on the Central Coast 17 years, almost 18. I moved up here from LA. I plan to be here until I'm not. However, in my case, and my disabled sister who's now living with me, I've had to look. We can't do it. We can't afford it. Even having roommates, they don't work out, and I personally am doing everything possible that I can do. And if I could go back to work full-time, I most definitely would, but I can't. I'm physically not able to. But I do other things to make things happen that I can physically do to make extra money. And I know that my neighbors do the same thing. I have a neighbor across the street. I adore her. She's wonderful. She told me she didn't have money this month to buy food because she had to buy her insulin. I'm sorry, I get emotional. I went to the food bank today, not only for us, my sister and I, but for my neighbor, because she physically can't go. I'm pleading here, can you help us? We all need it, all of us. We're going to be out. I did go to Rio Grande this weekend. I don't have a car. Unfortunate accident totaled my car 2 months after I retired. I'm known as a scooter lady around Santa Maria. I have fallen in love with this town because of that scooter. That's how I get around. I buy our groceries on it. I strap everything under the seat all over the place. Some of you have seen me, and I've seen some of you while I'm out there. We are doing the best we can. I went to senior apartments in Rio Grande. 3-year waiting list. I can't. We have family in Colorado. They can't help us. They can't take us. I went there for 2 weeks at Christmas and in March. My sister sent me a plane ticket. I shopped for 2 weeks. Can't afford to live there either. So either the park allows us to get 3 or 4 roommates. I don't know where we'll put them, but anyway, thank you for your time.
Thank you. Margaret White, followed by Eileen Armijo Encinas.
I am Peggy White. I live in La Maria, and I've made Afghans for several of you on this council. And I want to urge the rent control. I live on a fixed income, and our rents have skyrocketed, and we earnestly need you to approve this measure. Thank you.
Thank you. Eileen Armijo Encinas, followed by Rod Locke.
Good evening, Madam Patino and council members. My name's Eileen Armijo Encinas. I'm a resident at La Maria Mobile Home Park, one of the older ones located on Thornburg Street. As written in the Santa Maria Times today, Santa Maria has a regionally high poverty rate. The statewide poverty rate is 13.3%, compared to a city rate of 18.6%. Increasing the need for affordable housing for all residents, but especially for seniors and mobile home owners. Please remember that the mobile home park residents are in a unique situation. They usually own their own home, but not the land, which leaves them in a very vulnerable state. Although the homes are called mobile, they are not. They cost more to move them, and the lack of a park that will take an older mobile home makes it virtually impossible. Space rent increases each year at CPI rates that exceed the annual Social Security cost of adjustment, but put homeowners on fixed income under enormous strain. The rent in La Maria ranges from $600 a month to just under $1,000 for the same lot size, same clubhouse, same expenses. Discrepancy in rent depends on how many times the home is sold. Every time a home sells, the rent goes up 10%. Sells in two times in 2 years, it goes up 20%. The city of Santa Maria needs affordable housing, especially for seniors and low-income residents. One way to accomplish this is with the implementation of the homeowner enforceable manufactured homeowner rent stabilization ordinance for all mobile home owners in Santa Maria. In the stakeholder meetings with the city staff, only 4 parks are represented, but there are more than 15 parks in the city. They also need representation. City council members, please be proactive by putting this on the city council agenda. Thank you.
Thank you. Rod Locke, followed by Mary B., followed by Susan Kappa. Rod Locke. Followed by Mary B., followed by Susan Kappa.
Good evening. Thank you for listening to us tonight. I'm Rod Locke. My wife and I live at Rancho Buena Vista Mobile Estates, and we would like to encourage you to take up a rent stabilization program to protect the seniors of the community here in Santa Maria. Sacramento just passed one and instituted it very recently, as well as many other cities throughout the state. And I think we should be in that classification to try to preserve all the seniors that live here in Santa Maria. We do support the community tremendously. Thank you.
Thank you. Mary B.
Good evening. Good evening. I wasn't nervous until this very moment. I'll be brief. My name is Mary B. I've lived in a mobile home park for about 19 years. I only have 3 minutes to speak, so I will get right to the point. I would like answers to the things we are facing. I admit I don't know much about politics or why our rent keeps going up and our income stays the same. I feel like crying for some of the testimonies here. I'm sure that all of us here, for the same reasons, rent control. Please correct me and educate me to understand what's going on. Haven't all of us been hardworking citizens, contributed to our community to make our lives comfortable as we all aged? We sized down when our families became independent of us. We put our time in, paid our dues, and now what am I hearing is that our space rents will be increasing, and some of us might have to leave our homes because our income is not enough to cover all our expenses. Again, what's going on here? Last week I read that one of our veterans' income was $860 a month. Then his bills, his rent was $862. Yes, he got a little extra from his pension, thank goodness, or he too might have to live under a tree. This is really sad. Actually, I'm sad too, but more mad than upset, and upset. Well, maybe I'm getting off the subject here. I just want to say we all have voices to speak, and we must stick together and speak our piece together. I say get your neighbors, talk to them to oppose the increase in our rent, because I believe our voices could be heard. And I also believe there is power in numbers. We want to be heard. And that's all I have for now. I want answers. Thank you. If I have a few minutes left, give them to the next speaker. Thank you.
Thank you. Susan Coppa, followed by Esther Jensen, followed by James Testa.
Good evening, Madam Mayor and council members. My name is Susan Kappa, and I live at the La Maria Mobile Home Park at 1701 South Thornburg in Santa Maria. I'm here tonight to hopefully stress to you how much we need an enforceable rent stabilization ordinance in Santa Maria that will protect mobile home owners in all of the 15 mobile home parks in this city. And I need you to know that for every mobile home owner that comes here to speak, and there's a lot of them, and ask for an ordinance, there are many more who feel the same way but are unable to come here because of advanced age, because of a disability, or because they're just afraid to speak publicly. Would you really please hear them also and put this ordinance on the city council's agenda as soon as possible? Thank you.
Thank you. Esther Jensen, followed by James Testa, followed by Daniel Swanson.
Good evening, Mayor Patino and council members. I'm Esther Jensen from the La Maria Mobile Home Park and also representing the North Santa Barbara County Manufactured Homeowners Team. I'm here again looking to the council to consider enforceable rent stabilization here in Santa Maria. After the article appeared in the local paper, several people have encouraged me, don't give up. We know many are feeling the effects of the rent in mobile home parks. I appreciate their support, and I know our work is not in vain. Let's get on the city council agenda and make it happen this year. Thank you.
Thank you. James Testa, followed by Daniel Swanson, followed by Donna Michelle.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, council members. My name is James Testa. I am a proud resident of Rancho Buena Vista Mobile Estates at 2135 North Railroad Avenue here in Santa Maria. I have lived on the ranch for 30 years. I am a past president of the Rancho Buena Vista Homeowners Association, and I currently sit on the board of directors. I have been retired for 20 years, and I am a proud veteran of the U.S. Navy. I am on a limited fixed income. I have tolerated 30 years of rising rent. For the last 19 years, each year I have been subject to a 100% CPI increase or a minimum of 3%. This year it went to 3.9. I assure you my fixed income has not yet kept pace. I am here tonight to ask and encourage you to put enforceable manufactured home rent stabilization in Santa Maria on the city agenda immediately. Rancho Buena Vista is a senior park. Most of our residents are on fixed and limited incomes. Many have moved to Rancho Buena Vista to retire in our extremely pleasant and normally quiet community. However, over the years, I have watched countless friends and neighbors forced to take drastic action in order to stay in their homes. Some have lost their spouses and were forced to take in roommates to help pay the rent. Many more have been forced to sell their homes and move in with relatives, both inside and outside of California. Rancho Buena Vista homeowners need affordable rents and deserve protection from the continuation of past excessive rent increase practice. The city of Santa Maria can and should provide that protection. We need enforceable manufactured home rent stabilization, and as Judge Judy would say, and we need it now.
Thank you. Daniel Swanson, followed by Donna Michelle, followed by Rod Anderson.
Good evening, Madam Mayor and City Council.
Good evening, Mr. Swanson.
And support staff. I'm kind of getting the ebb and flow of this. This is my 4th time here, and I realize I don't want to waste any more time talking about that. I want to get to the point. You know, I listen to all these people, and they all say the same thing. Money's running out. Money is running out, and number 2, the increase at our park, Rancho Buena Vista, has been going up 300% faster than the Social Security recipients at our park. Number 2, I'm talking about rent stabilization, and to try to do it on a smaller scale, not for the whole city, senior park only to begin with, because it'll save you money and it'll be a lot easy to administrate. As a realtor, and I'm one of the few, I saw Ms. Waterfield speak at our real estate meeting several months ago, and I'm probably one of the few that are kind of going in the other direction, and that's because I've represented a lot of people that have had to move because they have run out of money. Number 2, I also have the privilege of going to multiple mobile home parks, and the people there are continually telling me the same thing. Dan, I can't do it much longer. We're going to be going. Now, if that doesn't, you know, I don't know what else I can say besides that to hopefully, you know, motivate all of you up there that are going to make the decision on the next agenda. I want the owner to make a fair and decent rent, and he's a decent guy, but 300% more over the past 10 years than what the Social Security is going up, I think is excessive. And there's multiple, I have different lists, but there's multiple places in California, cities and counties like Oakland, 65% of CPI. Now that's maybe wishful thinking. San Francisco, 70% of CPI. This is what mobile home parks are getting raised. Alameda, California, 70% and 1% minimum and 5% maximum. So there's 3 great examples of rent stabilization actually put into effect. And remember, we're dealing with people 55 and above, 60s, 70s, and as I said last time, 80s. Well, guess what? I forgot to include the 90s. And I want to let you know that 46% of the residents in California are tenants. Only 2% are landlords. And yet that 2% seems to have all the power. Why? Because they have the money and they have the leverage. And I don't think that's fair for people that are trying to survive on Social Security incomes. I have more, but I'll stop there.
Thank you, Mr. Swanson. Donna Michelle, followed by Rod Anderson.
Hello, my name's Donna Michelle. I have lived on the Central Coast since 1976. I love it here. I don't want to move, but it looks like I might have to because it appears that our council hasn't done anything. I understand that some of them have actually not made any comment when asked. But I'm here now, and it's hard for me to ask anyone for help. And yet I'm here. I'm begging you guys for help. That's all I need. That's all we need. We need to continue to live in a home. I'm terrified. And the reason I'm terrified is I took a crash course today on the mobile home investors who come to buy parks and raise rents and replace those who have lived in these parks with new tenants or just, in some cases, build townhomes. I've gone online today. I've spent hours. I can't believe how many is happening in San Francisco all the way down. People are losing their homes. But where are these people going? I don't know. On May 19th, 2019, Huffington Post wrote a piece entitled "Residents See Trailer Parks as Homes." Investors see them as cash cows. About 20 million Americans live in mobile homes, the largest source of unsubsidized housing, affordable housing. In our nation, all over. And because the residents don't own the land on which their home sits, that when the park is sold, residents are all so vulnerable. And to investors, a lot of money. And that's why investors are chasing the deals. This is a quote from the Huffington Post, just a few days ago, you guys. On July 11th, Forbes published an article, 7 powerful benefits to mobile home park investing. 1, lower cost per unit. 2, lower cost for repairs due to each home's repairs are responsible by the residents. 3, spread out risk. 4, demand is high because they're not making any more mobile home parks. So the demand is high. Okay. So then we have less tenant turnover. You can't just pick up your mobile home and go. And then we have the mom and pop owners who give investors the ability to buy parks at a reasonable rate, then upgrade or replace managements, thus increasing the current tenant rents and attracting new long-term tenants. And repeat, less competition is number 7. The best kept secret in the real estate investment industry. That's Forbes. You guys, maybe you guys want to get in on it. Banks are eager to loan to mobile home parks investors because they are the top of the list for not having loan defaults above shopping centers, apartment buildings, and office buildings.
Thank you very much, Ms. Michelle.
Thank you. Your thing's broken.
Rod Anderson. Mr. Anderson? Oh, okay. Thank you. That concludes public comment. Before we move on, Mr. Stilwell, did you have any comments?
Thank you, Madam Mayor and members of the City Council. The city, regarding the mobile home rent stabilization, the city has been facilitating a lease between the park owners and the homeowners since 1999. As we approach the 3rd decade, this issue came to the council's attention. It's a complex issue. The council recognized the complexity of it and has been directing staff to continue to work with the stakeholders to identify key terms of a enforceable model lease 2020. We have been working with the affected groups. I concur with Gary Hall's status update. The most recent steps have been to take the terms that we've identified and discussed, or that the park owners and the homeowners have identified and discussed, put them into a form of a lease that has initially circulated out among the stakeholder group, and we've received preliminary comments back on that, and we're including those comments into the lease, and we'll have a subsequent meeting to be able to review the document, and I think we're close to where we could be on improving the lease that we've had in place since 1999.
Thank you.
Madam
Ms.
Mayor,
Soto?
may I ask
Yes.
a question? Thank you. What would happen if there isn't an agreement that both parties agree on? Or if they don't come to an agreement, if the owners and residents don't come to an agreement?
I think, Madam Mayor and Councilmember Soto, I think we are coming to an agreement. We've been at this for 30 years. We have incorporated the comments that both the homeowners and the park owners have brought forward. So 2 things. So I'm confident we're making progress. We do have a draft agreement that includes the terms we've talked about, and I'm confident we're getting close. The other 2 options would be for homeowners to enter into any lease they would like to enter into, and then the other option would be to continue to work with the homeowners who don't have the opportunity to enter into a lease, and we'd need to further work with the council on how that would progress and what the city's role would be on that, because that would be a different role than we've had in the past.
Okay, Dr. Moats.
Mr. Stilwell, On this agreement between the park owners and the tenants, is there any mention of using the consumer price index as a vehicle, and there's a certain percentage of it with a minimum and a maximum per year? And if so, I would be curious to know what those numbers are.
The specific numbers are still under negotiation, but Councilmember Moats through the mayor. But there are a number of different indices being used. Some are the increases of government set price increases, such as utilities. Some are related to property tax increases. Some are related to the consumer price index. So we're looking at a number of indices and either identifying which of those would have passed through, and if so, what the range of the increases would be.
What is it, like 0.7 or 1.0?
It depends on what the particular index is.
When would this come to the council, or would it come to the council?
Yeah, at this point, there isn't any decision for the council to make, but if it would come to the council, we're following the initial direction of the council is to finish the staff work, come up with something that the council would be able to consider, if there is action required by the council.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions? Okay. Moving on to the consent calendar. Madam Clerk, could you please read item number 3?
Routine items are presented for City Council approval without discussion as a single agenda item in order to expedite the meeting. The consent calendar is approved by roll call vote with one motion, and these items are discussed only on request of council members.
Does anyone have items they wish to pull for discussion?
I do not, Madam Mayor, and if no one else does, I'd like to make a motion to approve the consent calendar.
There's a motion to approve. Do I have a second?
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, Madam Clerk, could you please call the roll?
Councilmember Waterfield.
Aye.
Councilmember Moats.
Aye.
Councilmember Cordero.
Aye.
Councilmember Soto.
Aye.
And Madam Mayor Patino.
Aye. Okay. I am going to take the prerogative, yes. Okay. The next order of business is public hearing, which is going to take some time, and I was looking for, let's just go ahead. Madam Clerk, can you please read the title?
The City Council will consider amendments to action plans for fiscal years 2015-16, 2017-18, and 2019-20.
Okay. The staff report will be given by Community Programs Manager, Ms. Rojo.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of the City Council. We come before you tonight to ask that you adopt resolutions approving the amendments to action plans for fiscal years 2015-16, 2017-18, 2019-20, 2017-18, and 2019-20 for the use of federal funds under our Community Development Block Grants funding, which is CDBG. Every year, the City Council adopts resolutions approving the annual action plan for the upcoming fiscal year for the use of federal funds under our CDBG program. The U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, also known as HUD, requires submittal of this document to for the city to receive CDBG funding. According to the city's adopted citizen participation plan under CDBG, if there is a change in the use of funding or in the amount of funding allocated, a substantial amendment to the action plan is triggered. This calls for a 30-day public review period, a legal ad in the Santa Maria Times, and a public hearing before the City Council. The substantial changes to the action plans are as follows. For fiscal year 2015-16 and fiscal year 17-18, the change isn't so much the amount of funds, but it's the use of the funds, going from land improvements to using the funding for acquisition. For 19-20, we are recommending adding funds to 2 existing projects, the Paul Nelson Pool reconstruction and Family Service Agency Santa Maria Valley Youth and Family Center Rehab. The reason for the changes to action plans in fiscal year 15-16 and 17-18 for People's Self-Help Housing is to fund the acquisition portion of the Sierra Madre Cottages project, rather than to use it for land improvements. Sierra Madre Cottages is a 39-unit affordable housing development for seniors 62 years of age and older who meet the 60% or below area median income. Off-site costs that had been predicated prior as CDBG eligible have now changed and are much less than prior estimates. Also, some land improvements do not qualify under CDBG regulations, also limiting how much People Self-Help can actually charge to the grant. For this reason, People Self-Help would like to repurpose CDBG funding and use the allocation as a source for reimbursement of acquisition of this project site. In regards to the amendments to fiscal year 2019-20, additional funding is being proposed to the city's Paul Nelson Pool Reconstruction Project, as well as Family Service Agency's Santa Maria Valley Youth and Family Center Rehab Project. The city's Paul Nelson Pool Project needs additional funding to pay for a project manager as a result of recent staffing changes, as well as increased workloads in the city's engineering division. In order to complete this project before the summer of next year, a project manager is essential in ensuring that the job gets done efficiently and effectively with the least amount of impact to pool users. Family Service Agency's Santa Maria Valley Youth and Family Center Rehab Project was the only project during 2019-20 that did not receive full funding. In addition, additional money is needed so that the agency could include flooring to the overall rehab project, which will avoid the agency having to phase the project, which would create more work and expenses in the long run. With the additional funding, the agency will be able to paint the interior of the two-story building as well as replace the flooring, which would be done simultaneously and it will be more fiscally responsible. The additional funding for both of these projects come from closed-out projects in which the entire allocation was not used. It also comes from a few repayments of existing loans that were submitted to the city in July. Reallocating the funding to existing projects rather than waiting a year will also meet HUD's recommendations of using the funding in a first-in, first-out fashion. This concludes our presentation. I am happy to answer any questions. We also have representatives from People Self-Help Housing and Family Service Agency here to answer any questions. Thank you.
Are there any questions of the council? None. Thank you. I'd like to open a public hearing. Madam Clerk, do you have any correspondence or requests to speak?
No, Madam Mayor, we do not.
Having no requests to speak, I'll close the public hearing and bring this item back to the council for discussion and or a motion.
If there's no discussion, Madam Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to adopt a resolution approving the amendment annual action plans for fiscal 2015-18 for the use of federal funds under the Community Development Blocks Grant CDBG program, and to also approve an adoption of a resolution approving the amended annual action plans for fiscal year 2017-18 for the use of federal funds under the Community Development Block Grant program, and also adopt a resolution approving the amended annual action plans for fiscal year 2019-20 for the use of federal funds under the Community Development Block Grant program.
Do I hear a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, I have a motion and a second, and I won't repeat the motion. Any further discussion? Hearing none, Madam Clerk, can you please call the roll?
Councilmember Waterfield.
Aye.
Councilmember Moats.
Aye.
Councilmember Soto.
Aye.
Councilmember Cordero.
Aye.
And Madam Mayor Patino.
Aye. The next, we have another public hearing. Madam Clerk, could you please read the title?
The City Council will consider authorizing the implementation of a community choice aggregation program and requesting membership in the Monterey Bay Community Power Joint Powers Authority.
Thank you. The staff report will be made by Assistant City Manager, Mr. Weimiller.
Thank you, Mayor, council members. As you stated, the decision before the City Council is whether or not to join the Monterey Bay Community Power Authority. As was presented to you, I believe back in May initially, Monterey Bay, just to recap briefly, Monterey Bay Community Power is an agency established to take advantage of community choice aggregation. Community choice aggregation is laws that allow public agencies like the City of Santa Maria to join with other public agencies in purchasing electric power and developing portfolio of energy generation sources, thereby lowering the cost of the energy generation component of the electric utility customers within the city. All of the city of Santa Maria is located within the PG&E service area, so currently PG&E provides for all of our city, all the customers within the city, provides for their generation, transmission, distribution, billing, and customer service to all of Santa Maria. If Santa Maria were to join the Monterey Bay Community Power, the Monterey Bay Community Power would take over as the generation provider for those PG&E customer accounts within the city of Santa Maria. The name of MBCP would appear on the PG&E bill in that one line item for generation provider, and all else would be fairly seamless in a change to the PG&E customer. Everything else would remain within PG&E operations. If Santa Maria were to join the Monterey Bay Power Consortium there, all customers in the city would automatically be switched over to Monterey Bay as their provider for generation. However, any customer can then switch their generation provider back to PG&E if they wish. That's a fairly easy and straightforward process. Monterey Bay proposes to rebate 5% of customer costs for generation back to its customers on an annual basis, more often for larger or commercial accounts. In those first 2 years of service contemplated right now as being years 2021 and 2022, and that increase, would there be an increase to the rebate level to 8% in the years 2023 through 2025. The aggregate savings to customers to be rebated is estimated at $1.84 million per year in those first 2 years, and $2.94 million per year in the ensuing 3 years. Just want to refute a couple of claims that have been made. We want to make sure you're dealing with accurate information. Whether or not the city joins Monterey Bay Community Power has nothing to do with whether or not PG&E closes its Diablo Canyon nuclear power plant. Unfortunately, and all of us are not happy about this at all, but unfortunately, Diablo Canyon is scheduled to close regardless of whether Santa Maria is in with Monterey Bay or not. PG&E announced in June of 2016 its plan to close Diablo Canyon plant, and Monterey Bay was founded after that date. Monterey Bay's portfolio of power generation facilities is not limited to solar and wind, but rather includes a majority composition of hydroelectric power to ensure baseline reliability. Just want to make sure we have those 2 points clear. If you're curious about what other local agencies are doing, you can see the list there on the screen of the other cities that are either have joined or have taken at least an initial step toward joining with Monterey Bay. And that includes the county of Santa Barbara. And I bring up the county of Santa Barbara because you had asked the last time we were here for a couple of things for staff to do, and one of them was to report back on a proposed action by the county of Santa Barbara at that time where they were considering formulating their own community choice aggregate association, and have opted instead, the county has opted to join Monterey Bay rather than start their own. So that issue's off the table. The other thing you had asked of staff was to have a PG&E official come talk to the council, discuss some of the issues, and we attempted to make that invitation, and that was declined. As we explained before, between court action and decisions within the PG&E corporate structure, they are basically on a gag order to be able to discuss the issues surrounding the formulation of community choice aggregation in general. So they've chosen to not come speak. I continue on with other local agencies besides that list that have either taken a step. City of Carpinteria and County of San Luis Obispo are currently considering. I think the City of Carpinteria is up for a consideration vote this week on their first step. So far, the City of Atascadero has made a decision to not join the Monterey Bay. So next step, if it's approved, we would we would return for a second reading. We'd be having the first reading tonight of an ordinance. We return to a second reading at September 3rd meeting and proceed with the process of joining MBCP, which has a number of steps to it that would last between now and through the end of the calendar year. If it's not approved, then staff awaits council's direction. And this concludes our presentation at this point. We're certainly available for questions.
Thank you. Are there any questions from the council? Dr. Moats.
Thank you for your presentation. The City of Atascadero declined to join Monterey Bay Power. What was their reasoning behind that?
I'm not sure. I apologize. I'm just not aware of their reason.
I heard that the County of San Luis Obispo declined, but you say that they're still considering it?
Based upon my most recent discussion with them, I called the person on staff who's been on point with that, and his statement was they are still undergoing analysis.
Okay. I'm just really curious why PG&E does not send a representative. You talked about gag orders and court decisions or state decisions about limiting speech, or even the corporation deciding not to advocate for themselves. I find that unusual. And I wonder if PG&E has lost interest in being someone who purchases power and then distributes it to us. Do they not care?
I'm not in the position to speak on PG&E's behalf, but it hasn't been just my personal observation. I don't believe it's an issue of them caring or not caring. I've never found PG&E to not care, regardless of what fill in the issue. That's been my personal experience. I do know that I believe that the technical decision that came from that was adjudicated was that there would be no marketing in opposition to either side. The community choice aggregators would not market themselves against or pitting against PG&E, and likewise, PG&E wouldn't do that against the community choice aggregators. And so that's my understanding of where it sits. And so PG&E has chosen, taken a conservative approach, as I understand, to interpret that as saying, well, we're just not going to comment publicly on it. But I don't think you can interpret that as them not caring.
Any other questions?
Yes.
Yes, Mr. Cordero.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Pat, the name seems to still be causing a difficulty for some people, and I believe I understood that they were in the process of perhaps rebranding that name. It just, the question that I seem to get is, why are we going to start getting our power from Morro Bay? And that's not the case. They're talking about changing that to Central Coast or something else.
I understand they've had those discussions as well. I also understand that they probably won't finalize those decisions until they understand who all's in, who all's out, and those that are in are going to participate in the discussion of what that identification should be.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions?
I do,
Ms. Soto?
Thank you. Can you repeat the rebates that our residents may be qualifying for if we join Monterey Bay?
Sure. And this would be a rebate on the power generation component of the bill. and it would be 5% per year is the scheduled rebate right now would be for the first 2 years that we would be in membership, assuming we proceeded with the membership process now, and 8% per year following that, for the 3 years following that.
How much does that equate to?
About $1.84 million per year community-wide for those first 2 years, I believe, and something like 2.89 million per year after that. Let me verify those numbers, please. 1.84 and then 2.94 per million community-wide after that for the ensuing 3 years.
After the first 3 years.
After the first 2 years, 1.84 million per year. Next 3, 2.94 million per year.
And what are the how much are folks who have solar panels, how much would they be receiving back?
Right now, for people that have solar and if they generate excess power that they sell back to the grid, I believe they receive something along the lines from PG&E of approximately 3 cents per kilowatt hour. And I believe that the proposal from Monterey Bay is to pay back a little over 6 cents per kilowatt hour.
Do you know how many homes and businesses in the city of Santa Maria in the last year have applied for solar panel permits?
Give me just a moment for that. Within the last year, for all of calendar year 2018, there were 147 permits applied, and so far through August 14th of this year, there's been 234 permits for solar applied for.
Great, thank you. And do you by any chance know currently how much the residents of Santa Maria as a whole pay for electricity?
I do not. Jared Killigrew is with Monterey Bay, and he's here. I should have mentioned that. And I don't know if you have that information available to share. Please, if you would.
If it pleases Honorable Mayor and Council members, Jared Killigrew with Monterey Bay Community Power. Thank you very much, Mr. Weinmiller. The annual electricity consumption of the entire beautiful city of Santa Maria is about 420 million kilowatt hours. It's pretty significant. And so when you translate that to about, let's say, electricity generation, about 20 cents, we'll call it, give or take, you're looking at about, I'd say, $80 million a year in electricity.
Thank you. Those are all the questions I have.
Dr. Moats?
Yeah, sorry. And just one more question. You said that both PG&E and Monterey Bay have agreed not to cast dispersions on each other and not do anything to advocate their cause against the other?
I wouldn't classify it as they've agreed. I think they've been directed to not do that.
Oh. Because I was just reading from this letter we were given the last time we came here, put out by Monterey Bay Community Power, and they say PG&E puts their shareholders ahead of their customers. That sounds kind of like inflammatory advertising to me, doesn't it to you? You don't have to answer. That's all.
Any other questions of Mr. Weinmiller?
You know, I do have I have a thought. You mentioned, based off Council Member Moats' comments and Ms. Soto's comments about PG&E not wanting to participate in this, but it's because of a court order. With that much money on the table in Santa Maria, they probably do, but they can't because they're muzzled. So we're getting one side of this, and that just really just kind of bothers me.
I have a question. I have another question.
Go ahead, Ms. Soto.
Do you foresee PG&E's rates going up for the residents of Santa Maria?
Ma'am, I've got a decline. I'm not informed to be able to know or project what their future rate schedule is.
Yeah, so I've been doing some research, and from what I've learned is that my understanding is that their current stocks are actually in the decline. And so given that information, given the fact that they're going through bankruptcy, my guesstimate is that they're going to have to increase rates on consumers. And as we've heard earlier today during public comment, families are struggling to make ends meet. And so that was...
Okay, can we just keep that for the discussion? Because I just want questions for Mr. Weimiller right now. If there are no further questions, I'd like to open up the public hearing. Madam Clerk, do you have any correspondence or requests to speak?
Madam Mayor, staff received written communications from Laura Selkin, Edward Alston, and the Community Environmental Council in support of the item. One communication was also received from Richard Beinert, who provided an editorial that questions the benefits of MBCP. Copies have been posted on the website agenda and provided at the dais this evening, and we do have 9 requests to speak.
Thank you. Okay, and people will be given 3 minutes. No other requests to speak will be taken at this time. Ken Huff, followed by Michael Chiakas, followed by David Dennis.
Good evening, Mayor Patino and council members. I'm Ken Huff, and I'm representing Santa Barbara County Action Network. We've been active for 17 years working on environmental and social justice issues throughout the county. And for several years now, recognizing the benefits of community choice on both of these fronts, we have urged our local governments to study the issue and to find ways to take advantage of the opportunity offered by state law. We had hoped the county and cities would find a way to form a CCA, but when that didn't pan out, and when Monterey came forward, we supported that at the county and at some of the cities, and in May we came here to support that as well. When the city clerk summarized the letter from the county at that meeting, we agreed it was a good idea to wait, but to find the best way to pursue these benefits. And now with the county having decided to join, we urge you to do the same. On Friday, the Santa Maria Times published my op-ed on this subject, and most of the content of that column was gleaned from Mr. Weimiller's staff report from last May. That report and the one that's before you today give good reasons for proceeding. The carbon-free electrical energy portfolio, rebates that result in rates, as you just heard, 3 to 5% lower than PG&E's, electric vehicle incentive programs, encouragement of local clean energy generation, to name just a few. Last May, some of you thought that this proposal sounded too good to be true. Well, now 3 months later, after more analysis and community input, your staff continues to find the proposal worthy of your approval. Some have worried they may not like it for some reason yet to be discovered, but as you know, any customer can opt out and revert to power sourced by PG&E. Your city, as a municipal customer, might even find it advantageous to opt out, at least for some of your accounts, for some period of time, in light of the next item on your agenda tonight. Meanwhile, we urge you to vote tonight to give the residents and the businesses in the city the opportunity to save money on their electricity bills and to receive greater incentives to produce their own clean energy and to know that they're contributing in a significant way to reducing greenhouse gas emissions. I do wish that PG&E did not have a gag order. If they could come and express their views, I expect that their representative would speak respectfully and dispassionately. But in their stead, at your last meeting, in May, you had a representative from CoLab, which counts, I believe, PG&E as a member. And I remember the term leeches being used at least twice in regard to Monterey. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Chiakas, followed by David Dennis, followed by Kathy Sharam.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, members of the council. My name is Michael Chiakos. I'm the Energy Program Director at the Community Environmental Council. And we are a nonprofit organization formed in 1970, working throughout Santa Barbara, Ventura, and San Luis Obispo counties on environmental solutions. And we've been working on community choice for 10 years now. Believe in it so much that we put in original funding for the feasibility study. So basic economic theory posits that competition leads to lower prices and better services. And that's why there are now 19 community choice organizations serving almost 10 million customers in California. Santa Marians should have a choice in their electrical provider, especially if it offers lower prices and cleaner electricity. The staff report says that Santa Marians will save $12.5 million over 5 years. That's a significant sum, and we all saw a lot of people in this room that could use some extra cash in their pocket. Much of these extra millions will be spent at local businesses, further boosting the local economy. The city spends $2.4 million a year on electricity, and so will also receive significant savings. Additionally, there's many programs beyond the financial rebates. There's programs to help electrify the transportation sector. You've probably heard that Santa Maria Area Transit is under a mandate from the Air Resources Board to switch to 100% electric buses in the next 10 years. Well, Monterey Bay Community Power knows that and is developing programs to help communities throughout the Central Coast with these new exciting challenges. It will also enable organizations to access funding to install solar and storage and microgrids. This is especially important to harden critical community facilities. PG&E is now turning off the power in communities because of the wildfires. Programs are also available to help low-income residents add solar power, reducing electricity costs for them. There's so many benefits, but so little risk with community choice. That's why the county of Santa Barbara voted last month to move forward, and it was a 4-to-1 vote, not a 3-to-2 vote. Cities like Guadalupe, Goleta, Santa Barbara, Carpinteria are also moving forward, along with 6 cities in San Luis Obispo County. And I hope you do the same today. Thank you.
Thank you. David Dennis, followed by Kathy Sharam, followed by Gail McNeely.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, council members. My name is David Dennis, and I'm a resident at 416 East Hermosa here in Santa Maria. And I'm here to speak in support of the Monterey Bay Community Choice Electricity. Earlier tonight, we again heard from people that are hurting with their household finances. And I know later this evening you're going to hear the city's financial report, and thankfully the city is doing well. It will also cite that over 18% of our neighbors live in poverty in this city. And this may be a tiny thing, 5 to eventually 8%, but it sounded like to a lot of people that matters. We've recently seen increases in sales tax that have impacts on people. Our water and sewer taxes are going to be increased. And right now, with PG&E and the issues they've had with wildfires, we know they're going to have additional costs to improve the transmission system. That's something we're all going to have to pay for. We recognize that. But here, at the moment, PG&E has a monopoly on the electrical power that I buy. With community choice electricity, I'll have a choice between 2 businesses to choose from. And if I don't like Monterey Bay, I can switch to PG&E. So I don't see where, to the residents of the city of Santa Maria, there is a loss here, and the excess revenues from this may also benefit our city in other ways, but certainly benefit the ratepayers. So I urge you to follow your staff's recommendation and join the Monterey Bay Community Choice Powers Authority. Thank you.
Thank you. Kathy Sharam, followed by Gail McNeely, followed by Carlos Escobedo.
Madam Mayor and members of the City Council, I'm Kathy Sharam. I'm a resident of Santa Maria, and I too am here to speak in favor of becoming part of a community energy choice program and in joining the Monterey Bay Community Joint Powers Authority. No one's paying me to be here, and no one has told me what to say. I'm here as someone concerned about climate change, our air, our oceans, our communities. All of these things are connected. And as much as I love to expand on the environmental benefits of joining MBCP, excuse me, I think the benefit that most people can relate to immediately is how it will save us money. The city, the businesses, and most of all, the residents. I know that the council is acutely aware that there are many that live in our communities that struggle to pay their bills. And they're left with no good choices. I feel now that we have a choice, and it's a good choice. The choice gets us away from relying completely on a huge utility company and towards a nonprofit run by us and provides cleaner, healthier forms of energy. I hope you will choose to join Monterey Bay Community Power. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Gail McNeely, followed by Carlos Escobedo, followed by Cliff Solomon.
Good evening, Mayor, City Council.
Good evening, Mr. McNeely.
I'm here in support also of this ordinance that I hope you will pass. And I bring you a story from Cleveland, Ohio, where I was born. In Cleveland in 1979, a new mayor took over the city, and the Cleveland Illuminating Company wanted to take over the energy of the city. And he fought as an individual and was criticized for this by banks and everyone, for the people to keep public power. Today, it's the Cleveland Public Power, and they have saved tens of millions of dollars for the taxpayers of the city. I say this because you have that same opportunity right now to make a decision for the taxpayers, for the residents, for the people who elected you, to save them money on their power bills and to give them a choice. PG&E does not make its money by producing energy, it makes its money by transmitting energy. They are the Goliath here. So you don't have to fight the Goliath, you give the people a choice. I think as representatives of the people, you would look at that and go, they should have a choice. And if it's saving them money, look at all the things that are going up. If you read the article, Razi Slayat, thank you for the article. It talks about how housing prices have gone up, our taxes have gone up, sewer and water are going up. What's going down? You have a choice tonight to say, we could lower the rates on electricity of everyone in the city. That's the choice you have to make tonight. I hope you'll make that choice. Thank you.
Thank you. Carlos Escobedo, followed by Cliff Solomon, followed by Nick Artuzzi.
Good evening, Madam
Good evening.
Mayor, City Council, and members of the community. I've been looking into this program for a couple of months, and it sounds. I think that it's a great news being able to choose what we want. You know, it's part of a healthy economy, having different choices, having different places where you can go and buy different kind of stuff, depending on what you want, what your budget. And I think that our city is struggling a lot in everything raising up and not being able to pay all of our bills. So I'm here to support joining the Monterey Bay Community Power Authority. And I think that right now in the world, there are a lot of change. So Santa Maria shouldn't be left behind there. And I hope we can adopt this program and being able to give us, as member of the communities, a different choice if we decide to go to the Monterey Bay or the PG&E. I think that's pretty fair for everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. Cliff Solomon.
Good evening, Mayor Patino and council members. My name is Cliff Solomon, and I am a resident of Santa Maria. At the last city council meeting, I spoke to support the decision to put on today's agenda a discussion about the approval to join the Monterey Bay Community Joint Powers Authority. I am happy to see that this topic is on today's agenda, and I look forward to seeing that the measure is approved. I feel that the partnership is in the best interest of Santa Maria, both for our businesses and for the public. It will give us an option, and as I listen to some of the speakers, I think that really is an important point to consider, that this does give us an option, so that we don't have to rely on Pacific Gas and Electric, a company that we all know is having significant problems. It will also provide cleaner energy at a lower cost and help fund local renewable energy projects. I know that there are issues that will need to be addressed so that Santa Maria can reach an agreement with the Power Authority so that residents and businesses can benefit from the advantages that Monterey Bay offers. I urge the City Council to approve the agreement. Thank you.
Thank you. Nick Ontuzzi, followed by Andy Caldwell.
Hi, thank you. Hey, I just wanted to stop in. I don't really have a speech prepared, but I work for PG&E at Diablo Canyon. I'm on my off time, and I'm speaking for myself. But I just want to say I'm opposed to joining the community aggregation, mostly because I feel like there just isn't enough information out there. There's a lot of confusion with how rates actually happen, how your bill happens, where your energy comes from. No one could come up with exactly what the energy portfolio was, how much of what companies they're buying their power for, what those projections are going to be like in 5 years. You just get, hey, here's your $1.85 million you're probably going to save. Hope it works out for you later. I can answer one question possibly. I was surprised no one else wanted to field it earlier, but as far as your rates, as what was explicitly laid out, transmission rates are, if PG&E decides to raise rates to cover transmission costs, that's going to be in your bill. That's my impression of it. It has nothing to do with generation. So if they, if there's a fire in Paradise and they have to raise rates to pay for those lines, guess what? We're all paying more. In California, we pay way more than we should have to, but I personally don't think that's a PG&E issue. I don't care what choice you have. I think that if you want to buy power that's more expensive than it should be because you have, whether they're good ideas or not, but because you have the idea to buy energy that's not as easy to produce, you will pay more for it. California's going to pay more for it if they want the carbon-free energy. And just to address one more small point, and that was what was mentioned today about Diablo Canyon, although Monterey Bay was not specifically made, community choice did play a part in shutting down Diablo Canyon. I don't think there can be an argument made saying otherwise. They didn't get to count as carbon-free energy in anyone's portfolio in green, so guess what? They can't recuperate, can't have a good public perception or whatever. I can't speak to why it is the corporate entities decided to do what they did, but that was what we were fighting at Diablo Canyon when we got the news, and it came from a 3-person, no one elected debate. 3 people decided to shut down Diablo Canyon for a state of what, 38 million people? And you all put $2 billion recently into that infrastructure? But again, it's not going to save Diablo Canyon if we don't go community choice today. All right, that's basically set in stone unless they try to test it tomorrow and all of a sudden we don't have enough power. But that's all I wanted to say. Just one, to answer the question, I think that, Councilman Soto, our rates would go up either way. If they decide to pay for it, hey, we're going to pay more. Yay. And yeah, they'll probably manage for at least a few years to give us our, little nugget of $1.85 million. But I don't see long term, they're just going to have these great power procurement for all of the 38 million people in California to go green tomorrow. The costs will be offset. Anyway, thank you very much.
Thank you. Andy Caldwell.
Madam Mayor, Andy Caldwell representing CoLab. The truth is they're offering a 5% rebate. but your electricity prices are 50% higher in California as a result of these types of programs and mandates. You're getting 5% back on a 50% higher electricity price. Councilwoman Soto, the other thing you must understand, PG&E is going bankrupt not because of the energy production, but energy distribution. Monterey Bay requires and uses PG&E for distribution. So whatever costs happen as a result of the bankruptcy get passed on to all the Monterey Bay users and anybody else in the PG&E region, because they own the transmission lines. You're not getting out of that. This is not getting out of that. Let me read from the California PUC, which I wish your staff would have included. They don't call this community choice aggregation, they call it disaggregation. We are deregulating electric markets through dozens of different decisions and legislative actions, but we, the state of California, does not have a plan. If we're not careful, we're going to drift into another crisis. Why? Because with greater choices and disaggregation of supply, current safety controls and protocols will become more difficult to fund and coordinate in times of crises. You got these everybody goes, well, we don't have to rely, and the word is rely on PG&E, or in the South, rely on Southern California Edison, because these puny little balkanized energy aggregation sources are on their own. PG&E and Southern California Edison are part of an 11-state consortium where they had the buying power and the staying power in a time of crisis here to get powers from 11 other states. These don't have the buying power. They don't even have a credit rating. Monterey Bay doesn't even have a credit rating yet. So here's the deal. First of all, they offer a 5% rebate. Community Environmental Council is here, and I especially focus this on Councilwoman Soto. They are in writing to the County of Santa Barbara. We don't want the rebate passed on to the customers. They put that in writing. They're not telling you that here. They told the board, we do not want customer rebates. We want all the money going into what is basically a slush fund for green projects. I have that in writing. It's in the county record. They argued against rebates. They're not here because they're caring about the poor people in Santa Maria. I care about the poor people in Santa Maria. For 30 years, I've been fighting for better jobs and lower taxes and regulations here. The other thing, and I've sent this to your city council, Ventura is already backing out of their community choice aggregation, and I had a meeting with your staff. You guys can't even sign up for this full program because it's going to cost the city too much for some of the programs you have.
Okay, Mr. Caldwell.
So thank you.
Thank you. That concludes the public comment. Public comment. And having no other requests to speak, I'll close the public hearing and bring this item back to the council for discussion and or a motion. Okay, who wants to?
I'll take the first bite.
Ms. Waterfield?
I've been doing a lot of research in regards to this, and I did reach out to San Luis Obispo. I talked to them yesterday, San Luis Obispo County. They are going through a very thorough research in what this does, and this is why they are not voting on it, because they're not going to subject their constituents to anything that is not sure. It's really amazing when you have to be careful about word choices as they're put. And then in one article that was just recently here, they talk about the 3% rebate, but that only applies to energy charges. It does not apply to the whole entire bill that Monterey Bay is pushing. So there's so many untruths to a lot of things that they fluff it up to make it sound really good. I am not at all ready to vote on this. There is so much research that we have to do, because if we're going to subject our residents to something that we're not even sure of, I think we need to do what San Luis Obispo County is doing and go through a completely thorough research in something like this. I wasn't a big fan, because you can't reach out to PG&E, you can't get the whole entire concept of what's going on here. And it's just, to me, it's just fairly one-sided. I mean, you talk about all this clean energy, but no one's going to answer how much acres will it take to make California green. And we're talking about conserving open lands and everything. You know, what's to say that, you know, they won't take ag land to put windmills on? I was talking to Monterey Bay yesterday, and they were talking about putting windmills 30 miles out of Morro Bay. And my question to them was, what the heck is that going to cost? Well, their response was, we're not worried about costs right now, we just want to make sure that we get this deal signed. And I said, well, that I don't like at all whatsoever, because there are so many hidden costs and so many of all these things that I am not going to subject constituents to something like this. I go, if you can't give me a cost, I go, because in my mind, we're talking billions. If you're going to lay cable down on the ocean floor and run it 30 miles out into the ocean and bring it in, not only do they have to get congressional approval, but then you've got a lot of environmentals that want to protect the ocean, which I completely understand that as well. So I would just like to say that there are just too many unanswered questions to make a decision on all of this. And, you know, we can either scratch it or postpone it to a much later date until we get thorough research done on this.
Madam Mayor, if I may.
Ms. Soto?
Thank you. I think that what's really one of the things that I really like about Monterey Bay is the fact that it's financially secure. I mean, in the report, it states that they have over $57 million in the reserve. They've been able to pay off all of their debt. They have over 300,000 customers under them. There are over 18 CCEs in the state of California, and there are about 12 under PG&E's jurisdiction. If anything, this to me reads that this is a financially sound organization, agency, and here we have an opportunity to have local control, and choice. We're giving residents a choice. I mean, from what I read in the staff report, any jurisdiction with over 50,000 residents, and please correct me if I'm wrong, will get 6 representatives on their governance board. This means that we will have am I wrong?
You're wrong.
One for 50,000?
One is permanent.
Yeah, for communities less than 50,000, they share and rotate representation. If you're over 50,000, you get a permanent seat.
You get one permanent.
Okay,
Right.
So we get a permanent seat. We still have an opportunity to have a voice at the table, and we are still able, even without one representative, we are able to fight and give a voice to the residents of Santa Maria and bring more rebates, more cost savings, and more programs to our residents. Whereas right now with PG&E, we don't have a seat at the table. Right now, PG&E is going to be looking out for the best interests of the stakeholders, not of the residents of Santa Maria like we do here. Their stock is plummeting. And yes, like I heard this evening, they're making their money off of the transmission. And yes, they're probably going to, and they will increase their rates on transmission, but that doesn't mean that they won't increase it on the generation. And if we can save our residents some money on the generation piece, given that the transmission rates will go up, that's something that we have to consider. Water rates are going to go up. We just passed Measure U. We are looking at a $12.5 million savings to the city of Santa Maria. PG&E is still going to make money. They are making over $80 million off of us. We are asking for a $12.5 million savings. We are giving residents of the city a choice. If they want to stick with PG&E, they can. If they want to save money, they can. We also heard today that by the end of 2030, in the next 10 years, all of our bus systems need to be 100% electric. Monterey Bay, please again correct me if I'm wrong, offers $1.1 million program incentive for it. They have an electronic vehicle incentive program worth $1.1 million. We will be able to leverage those financial resources. We will be able to leverage state grants so that we can offset those costs that are going to be put on the taxpayers' backs here in Santa Maria. Here we have an opportunity to do that. And lastly, you know, I think I've shared this with you before. I used to live in the Old Valley Motel down in the corner of Broadway and Main. Every penny for my family counted. Every penny. My mom, I have no idea how she does it or how she did it back then, but she was able to stretch every penny. Here this afternoon, if we can't give residents a rent stabilization ordinance for mobile homes, can we at least save them a couple of bucks on their utility bills? And stop looking out for the best interests of the PG&E stakeholders that, trust me, they're fine. Thank you.
Any comment? Dr. Moats?
Well, I don't, well, I can't get into the boardroom of PG&E, but I'm concerned that PG&E might want to get out of the power consolidation business and buying it. Otherwise, I think they'd make some attempt to be here. I was reading over again this piece of information that was given to us by Monterey Power, and I'm going to read this to you. Currently, Monterey Bay Community Power has outlined a few positions supportive of the following: decoupling PG&E from the generation business so they can focus on safety and resiliency of their transmission and distribution system. So it sounds like there may be an active attempt by Monterey Bay or other of these community choice energies to try and get PG&E to stop producing power. Now, these people kind of went into business, or at least were allowed to go into business in 2002, which far predates Monterey Bay, which is a couple years old. I wonder if PG&E decided that these community choice energy organizations will have an unfair advantage because they're not taxed. How can businesses compete with each other if one business has to pay taxes and the other business doesn't? It looks to me like that's a losing proposition. Maybe PG&E looked into the future and saw that they're a losing proposition to generate power. And we had the one speaker from PG&E who said that he felt that these community choice energy organizations may have been in part responsible for PG&E's decision to close the nuclear power plant at Diablo Canyon, which I think is a really bad decision. All my life, I've owned a small business. I'm a private enterprise guy. I like companies that have stockholders. I like companies that pay dividends to stockholders and that pay interest to bondholders and that pay property tax to the county of Santa Barbara and San Luis Obispo and that pay income tax to the state of California and to the federal government. We're talking about the rebates that the rate holders will get. Well, it's kind of a zero-sum game. I mean, the power users in Santa Maria will get a rebate, but look who loses money. The state of California, the federal government, the bondholders, the stockholders. So I think we need to consider that as well. So again, I just have some reservations about this issue.
Mr. Cordero.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just to muddy the water just a little bit more with what Ms. Waterfield said, I heard the same thing about the turbines out in the ocean. And something that really, I'm not an engineer, but something that really disturbed me was that they're hundreds, if not thousands of feet out there. Those are going to be floating. I don't know how they're going to keep them from floating away, but these engineers develop all kinds of things to solve their problems. But I'm sure that that's going to add to the $1 billion bill that Ms. Waterfield's talking about. However, having said that, I'm rather partial to the idea that we're giving these residents of our community a choice. I would like to ask Mr. Stillwell if there's or Pat, if there's a drop-dead date for us to do this?
Well, I don't believe there's a drop-dead date for us to eventually join. For us to participate within a certain annual cycle, I believe there is. I think we're about at that point where the remaining steps that would need to be done by the end of the calendar year really need to be set upon now. And if not, then we're merely waiting probably an annual cycle before we're substantively going to be joining again if there's that subsequent decision to join.
Okay, thank you. That changes it a little. I don't have the same level of uncertainty that Dr. Moats and Ms. Waterfield has. I feel like there's some opportunity here to do something that otherwise hasn't been done in quite some time, and that's taking the steps to save our residents some money. And the way they were talking tonight and the last meeting, that they're taking it right up to like $5, and they're deciding one here tonight that decided the lady couldn't buy food. So I would be inclined to get on this because it sounds like it's so easy to get out of if we have to. We can jump on it and go back to PG&E if they're necessary.
Ms. Waterfield.
And I want to remark to Councilmember Cordero, and in my research about opting out is not that easy. The Monterey Bay needs us, needs the people, they need the count to buy the energy. Once we're opted in, when we buy the energy, if you opt out, you still have to pay your portion of what Monterey bought. So it's not, we can opt in and we cannot opt, we can opt in and then opt out. There's still a price to pay for the energy that you were counted in the numbers that they had to go and buy. So that's why I'm saying, if there's an opt-out, why can't there just be later down the road to opt in until we completely understand the whole scenario of this program?
Well, I think, Mr.
So there's that portion of it that it's just amazing. The more you research it, the more questions you have left.
I think Mr. Weimiller mentioned that there's things that go into play after the decision is made, and then we would have to start doing those so that those things can happen before the end of the year. I think that tells you why we're under the gun a little bit.
Yeah. Well, you know what? We shouldn't be under the gun. They need us more than we need them. And that's the misconception of this whole thing, is that they put this carrot out there saying you've got to opt in by this time or else you lose out everything. That's not it. They need us more than we need them. They don't have a credit rating. They've been in business for 18 months. They don't have a credit rating.
They have $57 million in their reserves.
Please.
They don't have that, so that's why they need all these thousands and thousands of people as customers to come in. And so what's the pain in having thorough investigation and results to see what's going on in this? San Luis Obispo has already started the program. I asked them how long it would take. They said it would probably take months to get a thorough understanding of this whole thing. And so I think that we should follow suit, and I asked them if they would share that information. They said they would. So
PG&E is bankrupt. They have $57 million in their reserve.
Okay. A lot has been said here, and we hear things back and forth about what is and what isn't, and formulate our positions on those things. But when I was speaking on the phone with representatives from the Monterey Bay, they were mentioning that there would be 16 people on the policy board of elected officials for this Monterey Bay, and that being Santa Maria is over 50,000, we would hold one seat, and Salinas is over 50,000, they would hold another seat. And then there's several cities, and then with the smaller cities, they would have to come together and figure out who's going to have that position. And when I asked, what does this policy board do, they told me they would figure out the rates, they would do the budget, the portfolio, the legislative platform. So when I think of portfolio, I immediately think about our pension plan and how people who decide on the portfolio there are causing our pension plan to go bankrupt. And Santa Maria only has one seat. Don't think this is going to be local control, because this is going to be cities in Santa Barbara and San Benito, Monterey County. So don't think this is really going to be local control, because I don't see it as local control. Then they will have 16 people of the operations board. That'll be city managers and top staff from the different cities. Then they will have a community advisory council. There'll be 12 people on there. They meet once a month. The policy board will be meeting quarterly. And then on the portfolio, I'm also thinking about how much of that energy is actually green energy? Well, how much of it is hydro? How much of it is nuclear? Now, I understand that they're getting some of the nuclear out of British Columbia, I guess. So it's all these questions, and I'm not really satisfied yet with the answers. And yet I hear some people who supported the gas tax, which really, really hurts the poor people in Santa Maria, are really in favor of this. I would really ask Mr. Stillwell, could you speak to San Luis Obispo County so when they do their analysis, so that we're not going to have to redo it? Can we keep our staff people working on this? I'm not completely satisfied one way or the other on this right now. So that's my position. But I just think there's so many unanswered questions that I can't get answers to, or I'm getting two different answers to the same question and I don't know which one is accurate. Anyway, does anyone have any opposition to Mr. Stillwell contacting San Luis County to look further into this?
You're talking about before we make any kind of a vote?
Yeah.
No, I don't.
Because, I mean, we may want to opt into this. I'm not saying one way or the other. We may want to opt into this. But I think it's really important for us when we are committing the people of Santa Maria to this. And I think in our conversation, Mr. Ryan Miller, didn't you say that there's parts of some of the electricity that we use in the Santa Maria that is bundled a certain way that we could not use this?
Right. In the item that's going to follow this item, we're going to be talking about energy efficiency projects we've been pursuing here in the city of Santa Maria. And certain of those are tied to financing programs, low and 0% and low percent financing that requires us on those particular meters that are involved to be serviced by bundled services from PG&E, which means that entire list of transmission, distribution, customer service, and generation involved. So yeah, if you were to choose to opt in to Monterey Bay, when it came time to opt out, we'd have to analyze, and certain ones of our PG&E accounts we'd need to opt out of to preserve the funding mechanisms we have for those other projects, which probably have a higher dollar value to us in avoided costs than this would. But we do that analysis.
My concern is if we opt in right now, that it's going to cost us to opt out. we could opt out. I mean, we understand, but the cost, and I have no idea what the cost is, and I do not like to sign a blank check. So that is a concern that I have.
Can you go over the opt-out process for the city,
If you don't mind, I'd like to ask Mr. Killigrew to come back, and he can respond to that, I think, with better expertise than I can.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And
Thank you, Mr.
Councilmember
Killigrew.
So there are two steps in this process. So one is the city has to adopt a resolution and conduct 2 readings of the ordinance. That, and as well as request, we get the load data from PG&E to do the analysis on behalf of the jurisdiction. That is submitted to our policy board for approval for membership, okay? From that point, if the policy board approves the City of Santa Maria, then the City of Santa Maria will be seated. You will be able to select one of the council members to sit on that board, whether it be City Manager Stillwell or another representative to sit on the operations board. As well as we would look at Santa Barbara County as a whole and the number of seats there, and therefore there would be those number of seats on the Community Advisory Council. Now, at that point in time, we would file our implementation plan with the California Public Utility Commission by the end of December. We have a deadline of October 1st to pass the resolution and adopt the two ordinances in order for us to do our work. This is a deadline that has been ultimately set upon us by the California Public Utility Commission in order for us to submit all our documentation, do the analysis to make sure that we can go out to the marketplace, procure the necessary energy, submit that to the CPUC. They usually give us 90 days before they certify it. So it's not an arbitrary deadline that we're here to try to pressure you into this. We're merely trying to outline an opportunity for you to either come or not come. We are here to serve the communities that want to be a part of this agency. We respect the agencies that don't want to be a part of this, and that's our stance on this. So what happens is, if at that point, the City of Santa Maria, say in March or April of next year, says, well, wait a minute, I don't like this, this is not what I want. If we have not procured any energy on behalf of you, which most likely we have not, then honestly, the only step you'd have to take would be to actually reach out and say, we would like to remove ourselves from the Joint Powers Authority. And the only cost would be, we would have to amend our Joint Powers Authority document, and that would be a cost we would ask you to incur. Now, secondly, if you decide, say in next July or August or September, that you're like, hey, I want to get out of this, this is not what I'd like to see, because most likely we'd have procured energy on behalf of the customers in Santa Maria. Then we'd have to do analysis to see what we bought the energy for and what we'd have to unload or sell the energy for. Now, if it's basically we bought high, bought low and could sell high, you have no obligation outside of the Joint Powers Authority amendment removing you from the JPA. Now, if the market price is actually lower, then that delta would be something the city would be responsible for. Now, I want to make abundantly clear right now, PG&E is made whole for any departed load, whether it's to direct access or a community choice aggregation agency, through what they call the power charge and different adjustment. Now, PG&E has somehow developed an analysis that we're not allowed to see, the CPUC can't see, to figure out the delta between what they purchase renewable energy for and what they have to sell it on the wholesale market for. Right now, it's about 3.3 cents per kilowatt hour for every residential customer. So PG&E is made whole on the generation side of the bill. So if somebody leaves, whatever energy they procured on behalf of those customers, they have to unload on the market, and that delta between what they paid for it versus what they sell, our customers pay that back in perpetuity until that contract goes away. So I preface this because no single jurisdiction in all of the 180 jurisdictions across the 19 agencies in the state of California that are growing now, with the city of San Diego and the county of San Diego moving forward with potentially starting their own program, that not one single jurisdiction has left the JPA. There are plenty of ones that come with reservations, with issues. Again, we are not selling that this is the best thing since sliced bread. We're offering a solution to be a part of the puzzle to hopefully provide people choice and opportunity to save some money and give Santa Maria a seat at the table. And what I would like to say about the opt-out is any customer can opt out at any time. So I know the products that the city is investigating with PG&E. There's something called Res BCT, which we don't offer that product. So we would happily opt out the accounts associated with Res BCT, and you can be on your way. I got a quick peek at what the city of Santa Maria consumes for municipal accounts, and our quick analysis was about $52,000 in savings. Now that's before the energy efficiency. That's for municipal accounts. The other thing I want to mention is I didn't include the demand charges. That is a whole chunk of money that you also get the discount on. So there are a lot of opportunities here in terms of just kind of outlining all the facts. But at any given point in time, any customer can opt out. We can certainly facilitate that. We have a IVR, we have a call center. You can email us, you can email me. I'd be happy to make this a priority if you wanted to opt out. Whatever we can do to make it easy on customers, we will do, and that's our commitment. And I think just kind of hearkening back to one thing is, yes, we are hoping to bring forth 7 jurisdictions to our policy board in September. And then the remaining jurisdictions that would meet that October deadline, we'd bring forth them to our December policy board meeting, and that would potentially include the city of Goleta, the city of Carpinteria, potentially the county of San Luis Obispo, and if the city of Santa Maria decides to join. I know for a fact that the county of San Luis Obispo is contracted. It's a financial analysis. All of our financial documents are publicly available. We have a treasurer's report. We have audited financials. And actually our reserves are getting close to $80 million. And we look to go after a credit rating, if not this year, but hopefully sometime next year. Again, we're not hiding away from the fact that we've only been in business for 18 months. But we will look to go after a credit rating as soon as possible to make sure that our financial standing is what is being kind of introduced to the community. And the fact that our reserve target is now 75% of operating expenditures. So we will have a significant amount of cash on hand to make sure that we can show our financial conservative view to all of our customer base.
Thank you very much. Oh, Dr. Motz?
Can I ask a question of you? If you were a fly on the wall at the next PG&E board meeting, and they discussed what we're going to decide tonight, do you think that they would be in favor of us accepting your bid and have a disinterest in competing against you? Do you think they'd actually like to compete against you and hope that we don't take your offer, or do they not care?
Good question. Again, I can't speak for PG&E, and I can only speak about factual events. So when I went to present to the San Luis Obispo Chamber of Commerce, to their legislative committee, and it was about to hopefully get them to endorse us, or Community Choice Energy for the county of San Luis Obispo. There is a PG&E representative named Jeremy Howard who was there, and there were a lot of questions presented to us, and of course finally the whole audience room turned towards Jeremy and said, "What does PG&E think about this?" And I'm going to do my very best to quote verbatim. So, and again, I respect all the PG&E employees. We have a good working relationship with them. And he said, "You know what? You're going to buy power from them. You're going to buy power from us. We're still going to deliver it. We're going to still bill you." And you know, what we do on the generation side is we go out, we build projects based on our need. We're allowed some rate of return that's basically approved by the CPUC, but all of our profit does come from the transmission and delivery of the electrons. And again, the electrons move through. PG&E is agnostic as to who the electrons are coming from. They're a part of the CAISO, they're a part of the grid. They don't have an interest in terms of whether or not they're PG&E electrons or Monterey Bay Community Power electrons. At the end of the day, we're a part of this big bathtub that ultimately needs to be balanced reliably through a variety of resources.
So can I paraphrase you by saying that PG&E plans to make its profits on the distribution of power and doesn't really care about how they make power, where it comes from, and they wouldn't have a problem with your organization being our purveyor of power?
I think ultimately there's a lot of different, there's going to be folks from different walks of life who see it in a lot of different ways. At least from all the PG&E reps that we work with, we see you folks as shared customers, not one against the other. And it's been pitted that way, and I think unfortunately I have to go back to 2010. I really didn't want to do this, but when Assembly Bill 117 was passed in 2002, there were a bunch of cities and areas of California that tried to get up and running, and it wasn't until Marin got their program launched in 2010 that PG&E spent about $50 million of all of our money to try to make sure that that program didn't go live. It failed, and that's what led to the Code of Conduct. And so the Code of Conduct outlines that the investor-owned utilities can't market against. It's not a gag order. So what happens is PG&E used to go to city council meetings with the CCA and PG&E, and they were kind of pitted against each other, and it was an unfortunate circumstance where they're not allowed to say we're this, we're that, or we're left or right, we're different. They just kind of got stuck in a position where they made a corporate decision not to attend these events. But again, I will go back to all of the PG&E reps we work with. We look at all of our customers as shared customers, and we want to work forward to make sure that you get the best service possible. You know, PG&E handling the billing and the infrastructure, and then us, you know, going out and sourcing the electricity that comes with a little bit of a savings.
Yes, Mr. Cordero.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I think it was a couple of years ago, Jason, you and I went up to went to the meetings up in San Luis about they were going to decommission. That's when the warning came out, and we got into that issue about the money for the communities for the employees we're losing. As I recall, the reason that PG&E gave me that they were shutting down is that they could no longer compete with the nuclear power plant system against the wind and solar, and that the solar was going up so much faster that they had kind of priced themselves out because they have to, it costs them the same amount of money to run that nuclear power plant all night long. They're spending more money to make electricity, whereas if you've got these panels, and I've been over into the valley and they've got fields of them over there. So I'm not sure I agree with somebody saying that PG&E doesn't care about it. I think they want to get out of that end of the business so that they can figure out a cheaper way to generate their power. They don't want this nuclear plant anymore, which I think was also a bad decision, and we should have kept it for some period of time. So is that how you remember that? Okay. So in answer to your question, I think if it's interpreted correctly, is that they want out because it's too expensive for them to produce power the way that the way that Diablo Canyon was designed to produce power.
And here we have an opportunity to, again, save customers, save our residents a couple of dollars, and have them reinvest those dollars into our own community. They can go into our local businesses and use that money that they're saving. I mean, again, just hearing what JR just shared right now, to me, this is a financially sound organization, no risks. Residents have the opportunity to opt out if it's something that they don't want, and I don't.
Madam Mayor, if I may, I'm listening to these conversations.
Okay, Ms. Waterfield.
If we were in a court of law, the judge would say it would be omitted because this is all hearsay. Without PG&E not being here to defend itself in its own words, everything we're saying about PG&E is hearsay. So, I mean, you'd strike that. So we need to go back, and we need to do more studies, and I move that we continue this item and let more information and facts further develop, because we're going to go off hearsay, we're going to go off speculation, but I want to go off facts. And that's all I'm asking the council, is let's just continue this until we get everything we need to make a sound judgment.
May I ask what facts you're looking for?
1 minute, Ms. Soto. Do I have a second? There's a motion.
Well, I'm not ready to second the motion until there's been some additional discussion.
Well, I need a second so we can have discussion. Okay, it just dies for a second then. Okay. Ms. Soto, 1 minute. Mr. Cordero, go ahead.
Sir, you said that the resident can opt out, and you didn't hook anything into that where this payment is going to have to continue on with them. Okay, we're talking about a single resident. But if the city decides to turn it around, then we fall into that cycle of having to maybe pay for the energy that that your company has already purchased, depending on what it can be bought and sold for. So it isn't, I took it when Ms. Waterfield said that that it would cost us to get out of it, that was absolute, but you're telling me that it's not absolute.
No, so under the scenarios that I've outlined is there would be certain costs incurred depending on the time. That's if the city wanted to remove itself, extricate itself from the Joint Powers Authority. I would certainly not ever advocate for that, not because I have any interest, but it's more about the complications of it. We would be happy to help you opt out all of the customers in the city of Santa Maria if it became that difficult. And all that would do for us is we would basically say, okay, well, 1 year we had to buy about 440 gigawatt hours of power for the city of Santa Maria. The next year we don't have to buy it, and that's fine. So we're okay with that either way. So either if we have a 99% enrollment, 90% enrollment, 80% enrollment, 50% enrollment, that does not matter to us. We just want to make sure that the customer can make the right choice for them. And, again, I want to make abundantly clear that, during the enrollment period, so if the city decides to move forward, we would enroll all of the customers basically from Paso Robles, Grover Beach, Pismo Beach, Arroyo Grande, hopefully Guadalupe, the county of Santa Barbara, and then potentially Goleta, Carpinteria, as well as potentially the city of Santa Maria in early 2021. We would start sending mailers in late 2020. We'd have the virtual transition over that particular month. We send a couple more mailers. But if after the 60-day period of the enrollment from when you're virtually transferred over to us to your last mailer, if you decide to do it way beyond that, there's a small administrative fee to do that, $5 for residential, $25 for commercial customers. But again, we have never ever seen a jurisdiction be so dissatisfied, so upset about it that they wanted to extricate themselves from the JPA. If anything, I could at least reference the County of Monterey, which originally had a 3-2 vote, and the county administrative officer was not on board with this at all. But after seeing the way we ran our operation, the fiscal conservatism that we operated by, he basically said this is turning out to be a really, really good thing. So I think that everyone's allowed to have their opinions and their reservations about it. But I think the whole point of this is that this is an ongoing, long-standing relationship that we're entering into, that over time people get educated about it, they'll feel good about it. But the thing is at any time, in any way, they can opt out. And we will certainly help that. And if that means giving you my office line number, my email, to have any of your businesses, residents to email me, I will help expedite that opt-out. And the only thing I'll mention is that depending on when the customer opts out, there is a transition period, so it doesn't happen automatically because PG&E basically has to in their billing system, switch them back to PG&E service. It usually takes 1 or 2 billing cycles, so there's usually a case where you see the charges from Monterey Bay Community Power for 1 or 2 more billing cycles until it's fully materialized in the PG&E system.
Okay.
Thank you.
Ms. Soto.
Jason, do we need to do anything more with this if we just want you to make some more phone calls? I mean, can we just let it sit? We don't need it.
We can continue it, table it.
I guess my question to my colleagues is, what further information do you need to feel comfortable with this program?
Well, I suppose my answer to you would be that I don't know because I don't have the information before me. That would be my answer. It does leave me thinking to some degree that there's more to learn on it. I don't have any problem with that, but I don't have the same reservations that Ms. Waterfield and Dr. Moats have. I mean, I would be happy to make a decision tonight and get on board and worry about getting off later on. I would be happy with that.
With that, I'd like to make a motion to introduce an ordinance for the first reading and continue to the next meeting for the second reading and adoption, authorizing the implementation of a community choice aggregation program by participating in Monterey Bay Community Joint Power Authority's Community Choice Aggregation Program.
I'll second that motion.
Okay, it's been moved in second, and I'm not going to read that over again.
Do we get to discuss it?
We do. We get to discuss it. Okay.
Such as we've been doing.
Discussing. Did you want to make a comment?
Sure,
Okay.
I'll start out.
Okay.
The city of Santa Maria wishes to purchase a service or an item from some different vendors. And there are two vendors that could service or provide the service. And so if we have a meeting where the two vendors would tell us what they want to do and how much it would cost, such as PG&E and Monterey Bay, and one vendor shows up and the other vendor doesn't show up, that leads me to think that the other vendor doesn't care. And maybe they don't care because they're at an unfair disadvantage because they don't have to pay taxes, which I think was a silly decision by the state of California in 2002.
Would you clarify that they don't have to pay taxes?
Monterey Bay Community Power doesn't have to pay tax.
Okay.
PG&E does, which is unfair.
Okay.
Nevertheless, PG&E is not here, and that concerns me.
We still have two vendors.
Okay.
Of course, we all know
Ms.
it's due
Waterfield?
to a court order, they cannot be here. But in my discussion with Monterey Community, they could not exist without PG&E. They could not do their business without PG&E. They would be non-existent because they need those transmitter lines. So there's still a lot, pardon me, there are still a lot of numbers that we don't thoroughly understand with this new 18-month-old entity with no credit rating. Again, they need us more than we need them. If we can opt out anytime, why don't we just opt in anytime after we find out the whole story and we can understand more? The more we ask, the more questions we get. And so that's my concern. I don't want to opt in for our city and then have every customer have to opt out either. Why don't we just opt in after we look at
Once again, I think he explained that.
Well, no, he did,
That you
but
have
he
to
said-
get it in line.
Absolutely, absolutely. And there's a procession of items that you have to go through. But still, it's still unreliable. It's still, they don't have all the answers. They're going off of their own numbers. $80 million is not a lot of money in reserves for a utility at all. I mean, that number should be a lot higher. So, we need to look at that, and I would be voting against the motion.
I would like to state that, again, we will still have two vendors. PG&E is bankrupt. They have $80 million in reserves. We heard the opt-out process. It's not impossible. Customers, residents will have an opportunity to choose. I don't understand what further I don't understand what further information we need because those questions are not being asked. We see the facts right in front of us. Our staff have been putting in months of work doing fact checking, fact finding, researching. There are over 15 CCEs in the state of California. None of the jurisdictions have opted out. What more financially sounding information do we need?
Well, I can probably answer part of that, is that the rates, I would like to see the budget. I'd like to see what they're going to put in their portfolio. Because a lot of times when they talk about green energy, it's not what we classify as green energy here in California. And what their legislative platform is. What are they going to do then with where do they put the rest of that money? Is it going into some kind of a slush fund after they give rebates? All these questions, I think, are important to be answered.
And I believe that was part of
the portfolio part really bothers me. That one really gets me, because I know what we're dealing with the pensions right now.
Their portfolio. So, my
Okay.
answer is no.
Were you going to make any comments, Dr. Moats, or not?
Any more comments?
I think we have a fiduciary duty to the city of Santa Maria to be fiscally responsible, and if we have an opportunity to save money, we have to look at it and vote on it.
Okay. Madam Clerk, can you please call the roll?
Councilmember Soto?
Aye.
Councilmember Cordero?
Aye.
Councilmember Moats?
Aye.
Councilmember Waterfield?
No.
And Mayor Patino?
No. Motion carries. Everyone's holding their breath. Next order of business.
Can we take a break, please? A 5-minute break.
Sir, I'd like to thank you for being put under the gun so much tonight.
Yeah, thank you for being here. Thank you. We have another public hearing. Madam Clerk, could you please read the title?
The City Council will consider authorizing the city to enter into an agreement to implement Project Number 1, General Fund Project of the Pacific Gas and Electric Company's Sustainable Solutions Turnkey Energy Efficiency Project.
The staff report is being made by Assistant City Manager, Mr. Weimiller.
Thank you, Mayor, Council. I'm here to bring you both a progress update on our energy efficiency program and ask for you to take some action on Phase 4 project implementation. Just a little bit of history. We were last here talking about the overall program in November of 2018, where we asked you to approve, which you did, Phase 3, which was the investment grade audit. We've completed that audit, and we've seen the viability of the projects that were originally considered, and that's why we're asking for your support on projects going forward. Just a brief overview. This is a partnership with PG&E and with them as a contractor and their subcontractors. I should mention that Brent Patera with PG&E and Alicia Bender with Southland Company are here. Southland's been one of the subcontractors and project manager for the process. And if you happen to have any, hopefully I can provide all the information that's necessary. If you have any questions, though, they're available to field your questions as well. So council approved that investment grade audit back in November. We did evaluate all of the proposed projects and came up with findings on those. We've identified over $30 million of energy and water efficiency projects that would serve us well to proceed with. And we were focusing on short payback periods and the ability to pay for projects from cost savings and new revenues. In other words, to make it pay for itself as we progressed along, rather than having to go deep in our pockets to make those capital expenditures. So we're now seeking approval to implement the initial shovel-ready projects that have been identified. and as I said, to give you updates on other projects. So for the initial project benefits we're talking about, I want to point out that we have some recreation and parks, that is general fund grouped projects that involved in general new sports field lighting, lighting replacement and upgrades, and artificial turf. On the public works side, we have, again with the general fund, we have HVAC units to be replaced or refurbished, system controls that are enhanced and modernized, roofings replaced, building lights upgraded, and solar array at our old burn site in the landfill. I'd like to ask for help from a couple of my colleagues. So first I'd like to ask Alex Posada if he'd come up and give a little overview of the projects we anticipate for recreation and parks.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the City Council. I'm really excited to be here. This project is moving forward with some of the council set priorities of trying to get more sports fields out there for our youth. It's a different approach, and quite frankly, one that we didn't think of until we started talking more with with PG&E and the subcontractor on this project. As you know, we have tried to build fields in spaces, and the money just isn't there. We have 2 grant applications out to the state that were denied. We're working still positively with the developer on some property on the west side of town to get some field space in there, but it's time away. So this project offers us the opportunity to not only increase our lighting, but also to increase the efficiency of our lighting. So you're going to see some of the projects here where we're going to be upgrading lighting in our existing facilities. The second part of it is actually add lighting into facilities that we don't have. Specifically, the Crossroads Basin, where we have the ability to actually accommodate 4 practices under the lights there if this project moves forward. Oh, thank you. And then also the Adam Basin, which has been home for soccer for as long as I've been here, so a long time. Adding lighting at the Oakley Field, which we recently renovated, and that was one of the questions that council had for me back then, is why didn't we put up lights? The bottom line is money. This project offers us the opportunity to do some of these lighting projects. So what we have right now is replacement. This is what the project looks like for Rec and Parks. Seamus Park would be upgraded in their lighting. Right now the lighting is very poor. We are only able to use about 40% of the field for space. This would increase the lighting there. The Hagerman Sports Complex has 4 fields that are lit. But again, on a study that was done by the subcontractors on this, we could increase the lighting significantly, and I'll show you some pictures in just a second. Miramonte Park, upgrading the tennis courts there, the lighting there to give better play. Fletcher Skate Park currently has a very weak solar system, and this would increase the lighting there and make it available with safer lighting. Manami Park would add 1 field and 6 tennis court lighting upgrades. And Atkinson Park, we would upgrade the lighting on the 4 tennis courts there. The new projects are Adam Basin, 3 fields, as I mentioned, we would add lighting there. Crossroads Basin, 2 regulation fields, we would add the lighting there. And then Oakley Park, 1 regulation sports field. Atkinson Park, not only would we look at upgrading the lighting there, it's actually pretty new, but we would take out the grass turf and replace it with synthetic turf. Something that we have been trying to do for years to find the money, but haven't been able to. That will increase our use. Right now we have to regulate how people access the park because of the wear and tear on the grass. We certainly will have wear and tear on the turf, but the average lifespan on a turf field, a synthetic turf field, is about 8 to 10 years. And so that would save us a lot of maintenance-related costs. The field on the right side of the screen up there is traditional lighting. You can see the cast shadows on the infield area and the outfield area. On the left is the new lighting system that we would be looking at. Lights make the game play safer. One thing we see in sports today is increased use of metal bats And so that increases the speed of the ball coming off the bat and potentially getting out in the fields of play. So the sports field analysis that was done will bring our fields up into competitive level play. The next slide, so some concerns. This is a soccer complex. One of the concerns that I wanted to make sure that I mentioned tonight was spillage lighting, and basically where that light goes out of the area that we're trying to light. Right now, that's a major problem for us. This new lighting would keep the lighting basically within the bounds of the play fields. So it's not bugging our neighbors, it's not getting out into traffic. Again, just that lighting upgrade would really help us deliver better field service. This is a tennis complex, and this really kind of lights up. You can show you how well the courts are lit up and how well the surrounding areas are not impacted. The spillage is probably less than maybe 30 or 40 feet outside the area. So what does that mean? Right now, a typical field with lights, it gets 6 daily use hours per day. So that's 2,190 hours of playable time per field. A field without lights gets about 4.25 daily use hours, so 1,500 hours or so. If we could have this program move forward, we would be looking at adding 639 hours of available field time to our schedule. That's an enormous amount of time when you consider that most practices are about 90 minutes. So you multiply that by the number of fields that we have. I believe this would bring us to, 12 illuminated fields. We're talking about being able to address our community needs a little bit differently than we had planned for. Certainly we don't plan not to proceed forward with a soccer complex or a sports complex down the road, but this would give us an immediate remedy to the public concerns that we've heard. Thank you.
Any questions of Mr. Posada?
No, I mean, it's all great.
Well, I do have a question on, so you're going to put turf in at Atkinson. What's going to happen at Adam Basin? Because once you put the lights up, they're going to use it more.
Right, and that's one of the trade-offs that we will have is that we know there will be increased maintenance. One of the things that we will be talking about is how to recover those costs. Nothing is free in town. I think most of our sports agencies have said they're willing to pay for additional costs, and that would be one of the costs would be the increased maintenance that would have to happen on the natural grass fields that we have. Yes, it is a trade-off, Mayor.
It looks great, thank you. Any other questions? No?
All right. And just, I can't say it better than Alex has said it, and I'm glad you included the fact about how excited we are, because I realize I don't always give off that vibe. But I am truly excited about it too, because this is a good example. For instance, we are able to provide additional and recreational playtime opportunity, and normally you'd have to build facilities to do that. And to the extent that we can do this upgrade project and do it on a pay-as-you-go basis is one of the great deliverables that we see. And I think it's just, I know it's a little cliche to say it's thinking outside of the box, but it truly is being innovative in how we're going to approach trying to resolve these capacity issues. I wanted to point out too, I know it was difficult to see in the one picture that Alex had pointed out between the two fields, the one that had the old lighting and the new lighting, but he was making an important point that I wanted to reiterate, that the playing experience is better. There's importance to seeing the ball off the bat in terms of giving yourself ability to react to that, and so it is not only a higher level of play, but safer play as a result. So I just wanted to echo some of that. Additionally, to Alex's help, I wanted to ask Kevin McCune, our Public Works Director, if he'd weigh in a little on some of the benefits that we're bringing about within Public Works there.
Okay. Good evening, Honorable Mayor, council members, and the public. You've heard some of the benefits to the energy project. First to the community in terms of the lighting of the sports fields. After I'm done, you'll hear some of the benefits, financial benefits to the maintenance fund, saving up to almost $1 million in utility bills. I'd like to spend a little bit of time talking about, if I can get you excited about building maintenance, I'll attempt to do that. I'm a little bit unfair following Alex, but talk about some of the benefits to our building maintenance, to our infrastructure and the building maintenance program. It's in 3 specific areas, including lighting upgrades, both interior and exterior for city buildings, heating and cooling upgrades, including roofs that need to be replaced, and a central control system that ties both those lights and those heating units together so we can remotely operate those. On the slide is a brief review of our infrastructure and how the building program is organized. We have 1.8 million square feet of maintained area, or about 40 acres of space in terms of occupied space that we have to keep open and available to do business. If you're into sports analogies like I am, that's like 30 football fields of space to try to maintain. We have an aging infrastructure. Some buildings have a long list of deferred maintenance, and I have a small staff of 6 building maintenance personnel assigned to handle all of that. We're spread among almost 50 different locations, and that brings me to the first kind of excitement that we get when we come to start talking about this project is this central control system. So if you think about how we maintain buildings now, we get a request for a bulb replacement similar to what we have here. These are fluorescent bulbs. Each one of those will last perhaps 3 years on that order. And so we get requests for that every day. Maybe the building is too hot or too cold, or the lights are not coming on at the right time or not going off at the right time. And right now we have to leave our facility, go to the location, troubleshoot the sensors. It takes a lot of time, and with a short staff, it's a big impact. So we're looking forward to this central system that we can troubleshoot remotely. We can see if the system is online, see if there are errors in the system right away, and I think that's going to be a huge improvement to our workload and free us up to work on other priorities for the city that need to get done. Speaking of lights, one other advantage of the project is we got to inventory what we have. So it turns out we have 10,000 light fixtures throughout the city. And we spent some time thinking about, well, okay, so how much time do we spend replacing bulbs? And it turns out that's about 1/3 of an FTE just on bulb replacements. So another way of saying that, by upgrading these light fixtures to LEDs that last 5 to 7 times longer than what we have now, that's 30% of a full-time employee freed up to work on painting and work on carpeting and all the other things that are needed for our facilities. So excited about that. We have 114 heating and cooling units throughout the city. Some of those units are as old as 30 years old. And if you do the math, that takes us back to the 80s. And I don't get me wrong, I love the 80s. I graduated in the 80s. But that a mechanical system that's been around for 30 years, was manufactured in the 80s, is not efficient, is frankly on its last leg, and we're already on borrowed time. So if we don't replace those things now, they will fail. They will fail in an emergency manner. And a facility that has 60 employees that doesn't have air conditioning, doesn't have heating, is an emergency. And you're going to end up paying a premium for, I got to have it now, I need it now, I need it installed right away. And that represents probably a 30% savings by doing it proactively on a planned basis. So I'm excited about those savings as we move forward in the project. So in summary, the facilities division has a lot to maintain. We have a small but hardworking staff, and the project will replace a number of aging infrastructure items and free up our resources to work on other priorities. And I'm available for any questions.
Let me ask you a question, and you may not know the answer, but what does a light cost? To put it
a
up
fixture or
a light fixture, put it up and running.
Yeah, I don't have that number on. But I bet our team here does, but
Oh,
if you'd
okay.
like the answer.
So you're saying 10,000 light fixtures, that means street lights and
So these
everything?
are
Or just
mostly
parks?
with regard to inside of buildings. So exterior and interior building lights is what I was referring to.
Oh, okay.
So our street lights, most of those have been upgraded already to LEDs, so those
Yeah.
aren't a part of the project.
Okay. I'm sure Mr. Springer knows. I saw him not. You don't know? Okay. I was just curious. I'm sorry. Okay. Any questions from the council? Okay.
Okay.
Mr. Weimiller?
Thank you. And I did want to say, I don't know that we as clearly articulated as well. I did want to make sure of the point that was touched on, whether we're talking about new or upgraded the upgraded field lighting, or we're talking about upgraded building lighting, but we're saving money, and those are more efficient, less costly to run per hour for all those lights. So it's not only the improving and being able to, by schedule, update and manage the system, but also the fact that our ongoing costs were going to be reduced there. And I think it's real important, as Mr. McCune pointed out, that with a very tight staffing on building staff, it is going to be very powerful of their ability to work on systems remotely, be able to troubleshoot and fix some things without having to spend travel time or to drop one project, mid-project, to move on to another, but be able to multitask, if you will, to multiple locations from one singular location, if that's where you're anchored at the time. So continuing on here, I just wanted to say future project benefits. We've been discussing the current ones that we're asking you to consider, but I wanted to let you know our update that we're looking and we continue to analyze and working toward making equally as shovel-ready other project benefits. And a lot of these are for utilities, the enterprise funds, wastewater treatment plant, cogeneration system project, wastewater percolation pond modifications, upgrade to motor control centers, landfill gas flare upgrade, and landfill gas pipeline injection if the marketplace proves viable. I want to talk a little about financial security on all this, because we are asking you to make a decision on a pretty large expenditure. We've been working with Finance Director Mary Harvey, and the city has selected an outside financial advisor to help advise us on verifying cost and revenue projections that are accurate and realistic, and assisting us in formulating the financing package from the various financing sources that we have in such a way that resources are optimized and that the overall project can pay its way from a cash flow standpoint. I think we'll also be looking at timing of implementation. If we're able to, we want to move forward much faster, for instance, with the Rec and Parks array of projects. If to make it cash flow positive the whole way, we have to slow down our implementation, then we're going to go on a prioritization schedule that Mr. Posada and his staff have identified for us. So we'll eventually get to the mall. How quickly we can go really depends upon this financing and how much we are able to arrange the financing and to enjoy the savings on the front end of the deal. I also wanted to just briefly talk about environmental. There are some favorable impacts that these projects are expected to reduce our CO2 emissions by about 125,000 tons over 25 years, which is the equivalent of removing about 1,000 cars off the road. And just wanted to give you the assurance that any necessary CEQA reviews will be conducted. So far, we've only identified one of our projects that requires that, but I'm sure as we move down the road, particularly with those that are benefiting utilities, we'll probably have a wider array of things that also need CEQA review. So our recommendation is that you authorize the city manager to execute construction agreements and related documents for Project 1, and that's for the $30 million and change. We would be coming back to City Council for approval of specific financing package of the sources at the appropriate time. Also, that you'd authorize the city manager to continue to work with PG&E and develop financing of project that are coming down the road later, the wastewater and landfill measures, with an anticipated total construction values of perhaps around $25 million as they're currently estimated, and that you authorize the city manager to file the notices of determination related to CEQA documents. And that concludes my presentation. I'm available for questions.
Any questions of Mr. Weimiller? No.
So
Ms.
the final
Warfield?
cost was $25 million, is that what, am I to understand?
No, we have for phase one, those things that are shovel ready right now, just a little over 30 million for that portion. And that includes some of the projects that we had listed and talked about before. And then additionally, we saw additional opportunities for things. For instance, we have roofs that are failing or on the verge of failing. And if we're going onto a roof to replace an HVAC system, while we're there, we're able to go ahead and replace the roof at the same time. So we didn't have scope creep. It's not like, oh, we were doing this and now it's costing us this much to do this much. We've just identified additional opportunities.
So project one is $30 million.
Right.
And we're getting that money from?
From 0, 1, and 2% financing with the balance, different program financing with the balance coming from going through more traditional muni bond issue.
I didn't quite understand your last.
Okay, for instance, there's a program that PG&E, that is sponsored through PG&E that was mentioned earlier tonight about RESBCT to provide us funding. There's an example of at least a couple $1 million worth of financing. Then we have other funding sources that are available. We don't have the exact breakdown for you right now of how those would break out because that's part of what we're working with the financial analysts for, to make sure that we are on a pay-as-you-go system. So before we proceeded with those issues like issuing bonds and the like, we would be returning to you with those precise numbers for your approval.
Okay, and so we pay as we go. We've always done that with the city of Santa Maria. We haven't had any debt for a capital project, so.
In this case, it's making sure we have, I would say, cash flow as we go. We've got positive cash flow going forward so that we're not paying out of pocket for these projects. They are paying for themselves through their savings. There will be debt involved because we were also talking about issuing bonds, but that's part of working with the financial advisor too, to make sure we're getting the best pricing and the best mix of how we proceed with doing that. So phase one, those things that are that we call shovel ready, that we fully analyzed and are ready to move forward to. We have about $30 million in change of those projects. Subsequent phases to come yet that we're not shovel ready on, that's where we're saying we have an anticipated construction value of around $25 million. So it'd be 25 in addition to the 30.
To the 30. Yeah.
Dr. Moats?
So we are going into debt. We're going to issue municipal bonds, and that's going to fund this.
And I'm sorry, and that's going to what?
The municipal bonds, they're going to fund all of it or part of it?
No, part of it. We also have special program funding that's available. And it's the mix of these various sources that we're going to put together and optimize in each case to ensure that our financing and our payback are the most favorable to the city, and so we're not having to dip into current funds or reserves to pay for this.
So somebody's going to pay us 1% for debt that we incur? You said 1 or 2%?
Well, we're having savings, yeah. We probably have savings that we've identified in the analysis is reducing overall, like the projects we've talked about, are talking about reducing our overall operating expenses about $1.1 million a year with about an additional $188,000 of anticipated revenues generated from that. And then ultimately, when we get to building the energy, the cogen plants and the like, that can generate approximately $3.7 million a year in annual revenue. So it would be those revenues and cost savings that would be paying for the financing. And then once we have the payback periods complete, then the city just enjoys the additional annual savings.
Will the revenue we get offset the debt that we incur?
Yes.
even during the time we're paying down the debt?
From the beginning, that's our focused outcome, is to make sure that the debt is fully paid for with the savings or additional revenue combined to pay that debt.
So we get all these things and we're in a positive cash flow?
Yes.
Well, that's pretty good.
Thank you.
Any other questions, Mr. Wymiller?
Not after that.
Okay. I'd like to open up the public hearing. Madam Clerk, do we have any requests to speak?
We have 3 requests to speak, and we do have 1 written communication from
Okay.
Naveen Kashyap questioning why his company was not selected for the project given how competitive their pricing was. The communication was posted on the website agenda, and copies have been provided at the dais.
Thank you. Okay. Mr. Armenta, followed by Glenn Morris, followed by Naveen Kashyap.
Ernest Armenta, City of Santa Maria. Mr. Posada, I'm looking at your nighttime lighting, so if I got this right, Crossroads, Adams School, Fletcher, Oakley, Atkinson, all these will have nighttime activity, correct? When you improve the lighting, now we're going to have people there at nighttime playing sports and doing whatever they want to do at that park, or all these parks, correct?
Yes, that would make those fields available for play.
And so if we're going to have nighttime, then we're going to have more staff that do night shift to take care of those parks, correct?
No, we don't staff our parks in the evening. Those facilities are remotely controlled. The lights are paid for in the office, and then it's scheduled to go on through the system that we're talking about, and the lights are automatically turned on and off through that system.
So the Atkinson tennis field is unsecured and unlocked facility, correct? There's no lock or key or anything, correct?
It has been, yes, it has been like that for the last 25 years.
So, it's been like that for the last 25 years?
Yes.
What's the part, is the Santa Barbara County or Santa Maria Fair Park, are they participating or putting in to have all their vehicles parked at Adam Basin? During the fairs, we have all the trailers coming down there. Because I guess they don't have room at the fair park. Now, I assume that they pay a fee.
Yes.
They pay a fee.
Yes.
And that comes from the fair park or from the owners of the vehicles?
The fair park collects the fees for each of the spaces, for lack of a better term, and then they in turn reimburse us an amount based on our expenses to renovate the fields after the fair's impact.
So we prohibit and ban any recreational activity for the city members for the park, for their guests or their vendors can park their vehicles down there, correct?
Right, there's an agreement with the Agricultural Association that was made back in the 70s.
Yes.
That the Agricultural Association actually owned half of the basin.
Yes.
And they dedicated its use to the city with the agreement that during the fair that they could use that property for their function.
I'm requesting, Mr. Stillwell, if we can, this council can review that contract. I think the young people out here and everybody using playing sports, I think it should be brought up to this council again to see. Should they have a full, should we be in agreement with them? It's our park, we're putting the lighting. If we are paying the full cost, shouldn't it be the Farm Bureau participating and putting a little bit in? I think that's pretty fair. Last but not least, ladies and gentlemen, all you, the softball and football, Santa Maria Football Association, you see that it's 25 million here and 30 million here to put lighting and all kinds of phases on the I won't go through the 4C, Mrs. Patino.
Thank you,
And I'll
Mr.
end by
Armenta.
this, by saying, no football field for you. No brand new sports complex for you. You have to wait for a grant while everybody else gets their input first.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank
Armenta. Mr. Morris?
Good evening, Mayor, members of the council. I think you're aware one of the programs that the Chamber of Commerce is involved in is the what's called the Energy Efficiency Partnership local government partnership program. It's a program funded through the Public Utilities Commission. We partner with PG&E and the SoCal Gas to promote energy efficiency programs among municipalities and local businesses. I believe a number of years ago, Kevin referred to the upgrading of the street lighting, and I think the partnership was a part of that project at that time. Given the scope of what your staff is proposing today, the partnership is not actively involved in this particular project, but we highly endorse it. We think this is absolutely the kind of work that the staff, we congratulate your staff for doing this work and really putting our assets in the community to work for themselves, right? So that we're able to use the savings that is generated. We'll get all the benefits of the improved efficiency and added capacities. But the fact that it pays for itself as it goes forward is exactly what energy efficiency programs should do. This one's at a much bigger scale than many, but over the last 9 or 10 years that we've been involved in this, we've helped hundreds of businesses and the city and other municipalities in northern Santa Barbara County do these very same kind of projects, and we're thrilled that the city's moving forward with this and happy to endorse it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Navin Kasyap.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, City Council members, and the staff. Thank you for the opportunity of speaking here. I've sent an email across earlier. I was not sure whether I could speak. I'm down with my throat infection. We fully endorse this project. It definitely is beneficial for the city. We have actively participated as one of the contractors bidding on a certain portion of this project. And it is our understanding that we were not selected. I'm kind of here in grief, I guess, to protest about our non-selection. We were pretty competitive. Our proposal was pretty complete, but it seems like the city decided to go with some local vendor, not local, but in the city of San Luis Obispo. So we're trying to see if there's an opportunity for us to participate in this project, and we'll appreciate your help in this. Thank you.
Thank you. Did you want to address that, Mr. Stillwell?
I'd make a brief address to that. I'd say, first of all, I need to point out that the contractor here is PG&E. The city has contract with PG&E, and PG&E in turn processes, reviews, and selects the subcontractors that are involved. That's an important differentiation. But while the city this was not a city selection, I would speak to my understanding that in my discussions with the PG&E representatives, that indeed they put out an RFP, wasn't a bid, but an RFP, a request for proposals. They received 3 back. They thought all 3 had quality to them, including this one. And that indeed the package they presented was complete, as the others were. It boiled down to that their criteria of selection had to do with not just the initial cost of systems, but looking at the life cycle, that is, what are the costs of maintenance going forward, and also just looking at quality of service delivered. And so in that aspect, the difference between the response times and costs from a location that's down a couple hours away versus one that's in San Luis Obispo apparently was the tipping point on the selection of the vendor involved.
Thank you. Any other questions? Okay. Hearing no other requests to speak, I'll close the public hearing and bring this item back to the council for discussion and a motion.
If there's no further discussion, Madam Mayor, I'd like to make a recommendation to adopt resolution authorizing the implementation of project number 1, general fund project of the Pacific Gas and Electric Company's Sustainable Solution Turnkey Energy Efficiency Project, and authorizing the city manager or his designee to execute all documents and take other required appropriate actions for further projects under the Sustainable Solution Turnkey Energy Efficiency Program.
Okay, that is a motion, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second, and I'm not going to repeat it because it's very lengthy. Any further discussion? Hearing none, Madam Clerk, can you please call the roll?
Councilmember Waterfield?
Yes.
Councilmember Moats?
Aye.
Councilmember Soto?
Aye.
Councilmember Cordero?
Aye.
And Mayor Patino?
Aye. Okay, Madam Clerk, could you please read the next regular business item?
The City Council will consider the quarterly financial report and approve operational amendments for the fourth quarter ending June 30th, 2019.
And the staff report is to be made by Director of Finance, Ms. Harvey. Good evening, Ms. Harvey.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor, council members, and the public. Tonight I will briefly present the fourth quarter financial report for the period ended June 30th, 2019. Although these are not audited numbers, the balances will change as normal year-end adjustments are recorded. The report does give a general picture of how the city ended the fiscal year. I will primarily review the general fund, including Measure U, and enterprise funds. The beginning general fund balance of $10,071,920 is the final audited balance at July 1st, 2018. Regarding city revenues, only 2 of the 5 key revenue sources exceeded prior fiscal year receipts. Sales tax had the largest gain at nearly $1.7 million, or 7.4% greater than the prior year. Property tax showed an increase at 4.9%, or $931,000 more than last year. Unfortunately, those gains were offset by decreases in licenses, permits, and fees, NHIS, and hotel bed tax revenue categories. The $1.6 million increase in sales tax receipts is partially due to businesses opening at Enos Ranch that contributed to more sales in general consumer goods and restaurant and hotel industry groups during the first half of the fiscal year. However, January through June activity is showing a sales decrease in most industry categories, and sales projections for 2019-20 are projected to be fairly flat. Another factor affecting sales tax receipts are the ongoing problems with the state sales tax reporting system, which has created a significant increase in the number and the dollar amounts of adjustments needed in future periods to correct the previous allocations. In fact, the city sales tax consultant, HDL, are projecting sales tax receipts to decline in 2019-20 because of sales tax received in 2018-19 that should have gone to other entities. NHIS revenues are about $1.3 million, which is a decrease of 15.3% as compared to the nearly $1.5 million earned through the fourth quarter of last year. The majority of the NHIS material received occurred in July through December and came from the Chevron San Luis Obispo tank farm project. NHIS activity in the second half of 2018-19 was minimal, with small amounts of material received in January from Vandenberg Air Force Base projects and less than $200,000 in the fourth quarter from the tank farm project. NHIS revenues are only expected to reach about $1 million in fiscal year 19-20, or 20% less than 18-19. Permit revenues decreased by 16.1%, or just under $490,000 compared to the previous fiscal year. The reduction is primarily due to permits issued in the previous year for Enos Ranch development. And although staff planned for this decline and lowered estimated permit revenues for 18-19, the actual permit receipts for the year fell short of projections by 2.3%, or about $60,000. General fund expenditures are at 95.3% of budget and include $2.1 million in salary savings from personnel vacancies in various departments. Based on the preliminary revenue and expenditures, it appears that the $2.6 million transfer from the LEAF fund may not be needed to maintain a general fund balance of $10.1 million. While this is good news, I would be remiss if I did not reiterate that LEAF reserves are intended to address severe shortfalls in revenue that are temporary in nature, and the current reserve LEAF balance of about $6.5 million is not sufficient to mitigate the acceleration of ongoing pension and other operating costs the city is facing. Turning to Measure U, revenues through the fourth quarter are $6.7 million, or 134% of estimates. The increase in revenues is the result of the implementation of the enhanced transaction and use tax from a quarter cent to a full cent. that went into effect April 1st, 2019. Expenditures are at $5.9 million and came in under budget by 3.7%, primarily due to pending payments for the replacement of 3 fire trucks. Overall, Measure U revenues exceeded expenditures by nearly $983,000, increasing fund balance to about $1.3 million. Through June, roughly 92% of all Measure U expenditures were spent on public safety activities, with 47% expended on fire operations and 45% expended on police operations. As for the enterprise funds, the water and wastewater fund revenues exceeded expenditures by $3.6 million. The majority of other revenue is from state water reimbursement fees of $3 million. Expenditures included the semi-annual debt service payments totaling $4.6 million of principal and interest on the 2012 refunding bonds. Operational costs are under budget by 7.7%, primarily due to vacancies. For the solid waste fund, revenues exceeded expenditures by $2.1 million. Operational expenses are about 4.4% or $896,000 greater than the previous year. But capital expenditures are about $656,000 or 28% lower than the previous year. The transit fund showed revenues greater than expenditures by $488,000, with fare revenues for the year are at $830,000, which is just about the same as the prior year. Expansion and improvements at the bus yard, as well as preventative maintenance of the bus fleet, account for the majority of the capital expenditures. Again, these are unaudited numbers, but it does provide an overview of how the city ended the fiscal year. In conjunction with the fourth quarter financial report, staff's recommending one budget amendment for council's consideration. That concludes my report, and I'm here to answer questions should you have some.
Any questions of Ms. Harvey?
I do.
Ms. Waterfield?
And it goes under the solid waste fund. I'm just curious. You're talking about the increase in revenue with solid waste, and I'll start at the 896 or 4.4 compared to the prior year, but conversely, about 656 or 27.9% fewer resources were expended for capital projects. Capital costs include $350 for dumpsters and containers for Las Flores landfill development. The Las Flores, we're not doing anything out there yet, are we?
There's the development costs, associated with.
Okay, so my question is, from what I understand, it's run by Parks and Recs out there, but is it split between the two budgets, between Parks and Recs and the utilities?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, solid waste.
There's two different parts of that. There's the park portion that falls under
the parks,
but then there's the development of the actual future landfill that is part of utilities.
Okay, I just wanted to clarify that. No, I just wanted to be sure on that, because it was just, and then of course we've got that other thing going out there, so, okay, I'm good.
Okay. Any other questions, comments? Okay. Thank you, Ms. Harvey. Do we have any correspondence or requests to speak?
We do have one request to speak.
Okay. Mr. Armenta.
Ernest Armenta, City of Santa Maria. Mrs. Harvey, regarding Enos Ranch sales tax, would it be correct to say, would I be right to say that Costco, we had pre-existing generated sales tax from Stoll Street moved to Beta Arabia, Costco? And then you just hear me out. So we had pre-existing sales tax from Costco, from Stoll Street. We moved it to Beta Arabia, we washed it, and now we're calling it new sales tax for the Enos Ranch project. Would that be correct? That you get where I hope that I'm not sounding confusing, Madam Chair. What we're doing is we had pre-existing sales tax collected from Costco on Stoll Street. We are now using that number to prop up Enos Ranch project. and say, oh yes, we're receiving it, we're having a good sales tax, we're making money there. But the truth is, ladies and gentlemen, that it was pre-existing sales tax dollars. See, Enos Ranch project is Mrs. Harvey, did you understand my question, or do you want me to repeat it?
I understand.
Go ahead, Ms. Harvey.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. No, there is sales receipts that were from the existing Costco that are being generated at the new Costco. However, there are many other businesses in the Enos Ranch, as well as an increase in services at the Costco. So the amount of sales tax receipts that I am comparing is actual sales tax receipts we are receiving now compared to what we received in the prior year. So there is a sales tax increase.
I know you don't have this offhand, but I believe Costco moved in 2016, or no, 2017 they moved. So I know you don't have it, but maybe sometime in the future we can get the amount. This is for me, if I can understand. I feel that Enos Ranch project is a failed project. 50% of the jobs came from Costco. Majority, let me just go on to the next question here. So, Mrs. Harvey, regarding the hotel and bed tax, how much revenues are generated solely from the H2A hotels? Or should I say, are the H2A companies that are occupying these hotels across the city, are they paying hotel and bed tax?
Yes, all hotels in the city are paying hotel bed tax.
So if I ask the question, how much revenue are we generating? What are we making off of these H2A housing? Would you have that answer or that amount?
We cannot actually disclose individual.
No, or you can't?
No, state law that we cannot.
So only Alice Patino knows how much, and Mike Cadero and Michael Motes and Mrs. Soto and Mrs. Waterfield, these are the only individuals that know how much H2A revenues are generated, or they don't even know?
No, they have not been given that information because we cannot release it, individual amounts.
So, well, shouldn't we know, Madam Chair? This is just a comment. Shouldn't we know what we're benefiting from the H2A housing there? Shouldn't we? Shouldn't we be using those funds to provide for staff time? Next, if I may ask one more last question.
Thank you very much, Mr. Armenta.
No?
No. You can call Ms. Harvey and she will give you
Well,
the
I
information.
had a question for Mr. Ng. I want to know how many fees are waived from the Enos Ranch project. It's
Okay.
very simple.
Well, if you give him your card or give him
Give
your
him
phone.
my card.
I'm sorry, give me your phone number and he will contact you tomorrow.
No, it's okay, man. I'll just wait till the next meeting. Madam Chair?
Yes.
I think it's time to go. I think you've run your course, Ms. Martino.
Thank you, Mr.
We're in
Armenta.
financial trouble, and you're the leader, and you're my candidate. It pains me so to tell you that it's time.
Thank you, Mr. Armenta.
It's time to go, Ms. Martino.
Okay. We'll bring this item back for council for discussion and a motion.
Is there a motion on this?
We're at 5A.
I'd like to make a motion to adopt resolution approving amendments to the 2018-20 budget and authorizing the city manager to implement the same.
Second.
I have a motion and a second on the floor to adopt the resolution approving amendments to the 2018-20 budget. Any further discussion? Hearing none, Madam Clerk, can you please call the roll?
Councilmember Waterfield. Councilmember Soto.
Aye.
Councilmember Cordero.
Aye.
Councilmember Moats. And Mayor Patino.
Next item will be a report by the city manager, Mr. Stillwell.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and members of the City Council. The next meeting of the City Council is September 3rd. At that meeting, we have 2 crosswalks that we're hoping Council approves, and those have been requested by the community. We have an appeal of the Oakley Court project with Dan Blau, and we'll have a policy discussion of tenant displacement. I'd also like to note that next Monday, we are scheduling a community meeting, and we've been getting the word out on that. We want to have a meeting up in the northwest section of town to hear from our residents, and we'll be there to present with them, be able to answer questions they may have about city services.
Northeast.
Northeast, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
Do you want to give the location?
Yes, it's the, what's the name? On the corner of,
It's on Sway, the church on Sway.
324 North Swade Road.
Calvary, yeah, on 324 West Sway Road. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, the next oral reports of council members. Ms. Soto, should we start with you?
On Thursday, August 8th, I attended the Salud Carvajal Town Hall with Councilmember Moats. And then that was it because I was on vacation celebrating my 30th birthday. I know, 30. Hit me hard.
Madam Mayor, instead of my report of what I've done the last, gosh, I've just been everywhere, but I want to ask Mr. McCune, I've had this project requested several times, and it's on Bradley Road. I believe it's Sierra Madre, where Cornerstone Church is, right next door to Ellen Hancock. That sidewalk from that corner that leads to that gas station is in horrible shape. The concrete goes up like this in a lot of places. Can we get that replaced as soon as possible?
Yeah, I am familiar with that location. Totally agree.
Yeah.
It needs to be replaced.
It's a hazard.
What I talked to the city manager about was that likely is a great ATP candidate project because it's going to have it's going to be widened with bike paths leading up to the college. So I'd asked for some time to apply for that through the ATP project. In the interim, I think we can go and replace some of the worst of those panels.
You have to, because it's very treacherous
Take care
out
of
there.
that, right, take
Absolutely.
care of the really bad
And I've seen people
ones.
trip.
Right.
And that's just a lawsuit waiting to happen, so we really need to take care of that.
Agreed.
Thank you.
Dr. Moats.
So, on August 7th, I did the recoup of the city council meeting following morning with Ben Hayes' show. On the 15th, I went to a meeting relative to the city's finances and their investments. And on the 18th, I went to Day in the Park and helped Rotary barbecue tri-tip sandwiches.
Thank you. Mr. Cordero.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. On the 12th, we held another meeting at the United Way. Once again, as I mentioned before, already working on our Queen candidate issues, or programs that we want to do, fundraisers. On the 14th, I went to the Celebration of Life event at the Vets. And if you've never been to it and you get an opportunity, it's really kind of neat. These people, they get special recognition if they're 90 years old, or they get lunch if they're 90 years old, and if they're over 100, they get a special recognition there. And the young man that puts that on over there every year, Roy Allen, he just does a great job in talking to those people. And it's a nice event for our seniors. And on the 15th, I went to Merle Gardens with Mayor Patino. And they put on a heck of a party there, and you left a little too soon, Mayor, because the entertainment was world class. It was the most beautiful Polynesian people that were there. That did
That was me dancing. You didn't recognize me.
I knew I recognized some, but anyways, it was just. I think in Vegas that show would have cost hundreds of dollars for any of us to attend.
That was me dancing.
Yeah, and it was such a great show, and. All of the residents there seemed to really enjoy it, and I know I certainly did. And they were heading out to Hawaii to do another show there that was going to be a competition. So they were just a great group of people, and they had a great caterer too, I thought.
Who was the caterer that time?
I don't know who it was.
Did you eat the poi?
No.
Don't they just do it there? They have cooks
No,
there.
he said. I think he said
Oh.
that it was catered.
Oh, okay.
and we got a chance to see Sister Janet with her 86,400 seconds.
Yes.
So we got a chance to see, or 36,000, whatever it is. And to see
Gordon Gill.
Gordon Gill. So we had a nice conversation with Gordon Gill.
How's
and
Gordon Gill?
Gordon looks fine. He's been living there about 5 months, I think he said, and he's really likes it. He said that they take very good care of him there, and it was a pleasure to speak to both of them. And if I do say so, Sister Janet hasn't lost a thing. She is right on. She is just as sharp as a tack.
So August 11th, I attended the concerts in the park where the band August was playing. I don't know how many people were there. Mr. Posada, do you know how many people turned out for that? There was a lot of people.
It was one of our more popular
Yeah.
events, yes. I would say probably in the
And then this Sunday we'll be stepping out, so that'll be another great attendance. On the 13th, I went to the library board at the library in recognition of Chris Gallus, because she was retiring. And Helen Galvan puts on a great meeting because it's very casual. You just sit around there and talk, but they get things done. And it was nice to see Chris sort of reminisce about all the years that she's been on the library board and how much she has contributed. I attended a community needs workshop for special projects. On the 14th, I attended the Celebration of Life, honoring the residents over 90 years old, as Mr. Cordero said, and at the Veterans, and it was packed this year. It was really, really packed. On the 15th, I attended the Luau Merrill Gardens, and that also was packed. The food, the drinks, and people there, and they all looked had the Hawaiian print shirts on and the luau, and the luau's. On the 16th, I did the Rick Blameyer show on Friday morning. This morning, I did the Ben Hayes show and delivered. Our Rotary Club buys dictionaries for all the third graders in the Valley, and so this afternoon, we delivered dictionaries. I delivered to Ontiveros School.
Did you see Marilyn Garson at the...
I did see Marilyn. I saw a lot of people.
There's so many people there.
There are a lot of people that you run into that are there. And Friday night, also at Downtown Friday, there will be 2 of our athletes that recently qualified for the U.S. Olympic trials, and we are going to be recognizing them, so show up. And Ernie Rodriguez's band, Legends, I guess, will be playing, so that'll be some more good music that is local. Oh, you would ask me.
The mayor goes on the stage at 6:50, so there'll be 6 o'clock.
Okay, she knows more than I do. You can come anytime. Yeah, another dance for me. Any other comments from the dais? Hearing none, this meeting is adjourned.